"Sign it now, Miss William," Detective Carl Harris said, sliding the confession across the metal table. "Either you confess right now, or we'll drag you out of here in handcuffs." Maya shook her head. "Please believe me," she whispered, tears gathering in her eyes. "I didn't do any of those things." Harris pushed a pen toward her with 2 fingers. "Pick up the pen and sign it. Stop wasting our time. A low-paid nurse, a widow, with no family to lean on. Where else would you get the money to survive if you weren't embezzling from the medical fund and smuggling narcotics out?" Maya's hands began to shake harder. "I didn't do it," she said, her voice cracking. "I swear to God, I never touched a single pill unless it was meant for a patient. I've been working overtime for years. Everybody knows that." The detective Harris cut her off. "Sounds touching. But around here, we deal in evidence, not tears." He leaned back in his chair and studied her. "You understand what this says?" he asked. Maya swallowed. Her throat felt dry. "It says I stole from sick people. It says you diverted controlled medication from a hospital pharmacy, falsified patient signatures, and misused charitable funds attached to Street Catherine's assistance program." He tapped the paper again. "That is the clean version." "The clean version," Maya repeated softly. "The ugly version involves federal prosecutors, prescription drug trafficking, financial fraud, and a judge who won't care how many patients called you sweet over the years." Beside Maya, the public defender shifted in his chair. His name was Mr. Callahan. He had looked at her for all of 6 seconds before looking at the charges. "Miss William," he said in the careful voice of a man who wanted to sound kind without getting involved, "this offer may not stay on the table. If you sign tonight, you could be looking at a lesser charge. Misappropriation, probation, possibly. You would lose your nursing license, yes, but you would likely avoid a long sentence." Maya turned toward him slowly. "Lose my nursing license?" He looked uncomfortable. "Given the allegations, that is unavoidable." "My license is not a card in my wallet, Mr. Callahan." Her voice trembled, but she did not lower it. "It is 35 years of washing blood from my hands, missing Christmas mornings, holding people while they died because their families couldn't get there in time." Detective Harris exhaled through his nose. "Nobody said you didn't work hard." "No," Maya said, looking back at him. "You just said, I stole." Harris opened the folder in front of him and spread the pages like a preacher opening a Bible he did not believe in. "We have pharmacy access logs under your credentials. We have patient assistance fund transfers routed through accounts tied to forms you signed. We have patient complaints. We have camera footage showing someone matching your build entering a restricted medication room after hours." "Someone matching my build," Maya whispered. "And we have your supervisor confirming you often stayed late without authorization." Maya's hands trembled against the cuffs. "My husband," she said, struggling to keep her voice from breaking, before he closed his eyes for the last time, "told me to live with my head held high. All these years, I poured every bit of love I had left into poor patients, into elderly people with nobody sitting beside them, into children left waiting in hallways because no one knew where else to put them. I accepted being pushed around. I accepted working until my body gave out without one word of complaint, because I believed." Her voice faltered. "I believed that if I lived kindly, the truth would protect me. Why won't you investigate the pharmacy cameras? Why won't you ask my patients? Why won't you ask the people who watched me work double shifts until I could barely stand?" Detective Harris pushed a pen toward her. "Miss William, listen carefully. Hospitals don't bring cases like this unless they have proof. Street Catherine's has lawyers. They have digital records. They have administrators willing to testify. You have a public defender and a story about being misunderstood." Maya stared at the pen. Such a small thing to destroy a life. Mr. Callahan leaned closer and lowered his voice. "I know this feels unfair, but sometimes the best decision is the one that leaves you with a future." "A future doing what?" Maya asked. "Bagging groceries while people whisper that I stole pills from cancer patients?" He did not answer. Harris folded his arms. "You should have thought about that before." Maya looked up then. "I have cleaned wounds, held dying hands, and prayed beside empty beds," she said. "I have fed children from my own lunch bag because their mothers were too sick to stand. I have ridden the bus home after midnight with swollen feet and $3 in my purse. I have never stolen from the sick. Then Harris reached across the table and turned the confession so the signature line faced her. Pretty speech, he said. Sign. Mr. Callahan pushed the ballpoint pen closer to Maya's hand. This world does not run on kindness or self-respect, Maya, he said quietly. Sign it. This is the only way out I can get for you. Don't destroy what is left of your life. Maya looked at Mr. Callahan. The truth, she whispered, her voice choking on the words. Is it really worth so little? Maybe this was what they wanted. Not just her signature, but her surrender. Her fingers moved toward the pen. The chain scraped across the metal table. Detective Harris frowned. The door opened slowly, and an elderly black pastor stepped inside, rain glistening on the shoulders of his dark overcoat. In the other, he held an old manila envelope, yellowed at the corners and tied with a thin piece of string. His eyes went first to Maya's cuffs, then to the confession, then to her face. Maya, Reverend Thomas Avery said softly, with the grief of a man who had arrived just before something precious was broken. Child, don't sign that. Reverend Thomas Avery did not raise his voice, but the room changed when he entered. Detective Harris stood halfway from his chair. Who let you in here? The desk sergeant, Reverend Avery said calmly. He knows me. I baptized 2 of his grandchildren and buried his mother last winter. That doesn't give you the right to interrupt an interview. No, the pastor said, looking at Maya. But it gives me the duty to stop a frightened woman from signing away her life while she's being cornered. Mr. Callahan shifted, embarrassed now. Reverend, this is a legal matter. And truth is not? Reverend Avery asked. Maya stared at the envelope in his hand. Pastor Avery, she whispered. You shouldn't have come. He stepped closer to the table. Child, I should have come sooner. Detective Harris reached for the envelope. What is that? Reverend Avery pulled it back before the detective could touch it. Something that belongs to her story. And from the look of this room, her story is the one thing nobody has bothered to ask about. Then he turned to him, his old eyes steady and unafraid. Maya is a good woman. I can put the honor of my whole life serving God on the line to testify for her. Mr. Callahan sighed and rubbed his forehead. Reverend, goodness has no legal value in court. We need evidence, not God's personal guarantee. Reverend Avery placed the envelope on the metal table and pushed it toward the detective. Then here is evidence. Evidence that proves she lived with almost nothing for herself. Evidence that shows she spent her life helping other people, sir. Detective Harris gave a dry little laugh. He opened the envelope, pulled out several old receipts, and flipped through them. His eyes narrowed when he saw the dates and monthly amounts. Saving money, huh? She was so careful with money that her bank account sent out a payment every month to an anonymous church fund? Maya's face went still. Harris looked at her over the page. Don't insult me, William. That looks a lot like money being washed through a charity. Money from illegal prescription sales, maybe. He turned sharply toward Reverend Avery. And you, Reverend, might want to think about how this looks. You may be covering for a woman laundering drug money through your church. For years, she had swallowed insults until they became part of her breathing. But hearing them drag Reverend Avery and the church into their dirt was more than she could bear. Enough. Maya rose so fast the cuffs jerked against the table. The chain snapped tight with a hard metallic sound. You do not get to smear the pastor. You do not get to smear the church. I will not sign. I absolutely will not sign that shameful confession. If you feel Maya's pain in this moment, please hit the like button and tell us in the comments where you are watching from, because maybe someone near you is watching this story too. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss what happens next. Detective Harris slammed his palm against the table. Mrs. William, have you lost your mind? Look at reality. For the first time that night, Maya's voice turned sharp enough to cut through the stale air. Reality is that you are closing your eyes to the real criminals. You say I stole medication because of an electronic ID code, right? Then let me tell you who you should be looking at. Mr. Callahan stiffened. Maya, be careful. No, Maya said, her eyes shining with tears and fury. I have been careful all my life, And look where careful got me. She turned back to Harris. Nurse Sarah borrowed my ID badge that night. She said she needed it to check inventory because the scanner at the pharmacy door was acting up. She said, Elaine Porter had approved it. Why haven't you seized Sarah's phone? Why haven't you checked her bank account? Why haven't you checked Elaine Porter's accounts? Maya kept going. They are the ones living fancy. Designer handbags, new coats, jewelry that costs more than my rent. Sarah drives a white Lexus and parks it right by the employee entrance. Elaine wears shoes worth half my paycheck. And me? I can barely afford a decent pair of work shoes. And you want people to believe I was selling drugs? Mr. Callahan grabbed lightly at her arm, panic rising in his face. Maya, do you understand you're accusing other people without proof? This could make everything worse for you. Maya pulled her arm away from him. Tears stood in her eyes, but her voice did not collapse. I am not lying. I will go to court. I will stand before any judge they put in front of me. I will go to federal prison if they can prove I sold one single pill. But I would rather rot behind bars with a clean soul than sign my name here and become a curtain for corrupt people to hide behind. Reverend Avery closed his eyes, his lips moving in a silent prayer. Maya leaned forward. The truth may be buried today. It may be mocked in this room. But God will not close his eyes just because men with badges choose to close theirs. Detective Harris's face flushed red. That's enough, he said, his voice low and dangerous. Take a good look at yourself, William. Take a good look at your skin, your empty pockets, and that cheap uniform. In this city, who do you think a jury is going to believe? A broke black nurse with no family and no money? Or the hospital board? The white doctors? The administrators with degrees on the wall? And reputations your kind could never touch? Even Mr. Callahan looked up, startled by how naked the words had become. Harris leaned closer, his voice hardening. Sign this confession, and you lose your nursing license. You take probation on a lesser embezzlement charge. Maybe you go home tonight. Keep being stubborn. Keep throwing accusations at respected medical professionals. And I promise you, we will finish this file ourselves. We will make sure federal prosecutors see a woman who stole drugs, laundered money through a church, and blamed everyone else when she got caught. He bent so close that Maya could smell the coffee on his breath. Congratulations on your pride, he said. It may buy you the strictest federal prison they can find. Maya stood trembling, her cuffed hands gripping the cold metal edge of the table. Her body was afraid. Mr. Callahan looked defeated. Maya, please. Think. I am thinking, she said, not taking her eyes off Harris. For the first time tonight, I am thinking about myself. Harris opened his mouth to answer, but a voice came from the doorway. That would be wise, detective, because from where I'm standing, this room has already produced more civil rights violations than evidence. Everyone turned. A tall black man stood at the entrance, calm as a judge. Detective Harris frowned. And who the hell are you? The man stepped inside without asking permission. His eyes moved to Maya's cuffs, then to the confession, then to Reverend Avery's envelope, lying open on the table. I am a federal criminal and civil rights attorney, he said. I am Ethan Carter. Maya stared at him, confused by the sudden silence in her own chest. Something about his face stirred a memory she could not yet reach. The man reached into the inside pocket of his vest and took out a gold-edged business card. He placed it directly on top of the confession, covering the signature line. And from this moment forward, he said, I am the only legal representative for Miss Maya William. Ethan Carter did not bother looking at Mr. Callahan. He stepped around the table and placed himself directly between Maya and Detective Harris, shielding the trembling woman behind him. Maya stood behind him, stunned. I happen to be here handling another case, Ethan said, but fortunately, I heard the raised voices from this room. Detective Harris, I am instructing you to stop questioning my client immediately. I want the complete arrest file provided to me within 10 minutes. I also want all original hospital data sealed at once, including the full camera footage from the time period in which my client is accused. Detective Harris blinked, caught between anger and the sudden need to measure his words. You. You don't walk in here and give orders to police. This case already has evidence. Ethan's eyes sharpened. I am relying on the Constitution and criminal procedure, he said, each word controlled and hard. If I do not receive what I requested within the next 10 minutes, I will file in federal court for coercive interrogation, racial discrimination, and intentional mishandling of case evidence. Do not test my patience. Behind Ethan, Maya pressed one trembling hand against her chest. The name echoed inside her. Ethan Carter. Years had passed. The skinny boy from the hospital hallway had become a man in a fine suit, a man with a voice that made detectives hesitate and lawyers fall silent. But the name was the same. The eyes were the same. The careful dignity was the same. How could she ever forget him? Maya did not say his name out loud. She could not. It sat behind her teeth like a prayer she had forgotten how to finish. Ethan Carter. The last time she had seen him, he had been 17, thin as a rail, standing outside Street Catherine's with a second-hand backpack over one shoulder and a scholarship letter folded in his fist. His mother had already been gone 2 years by then. Maya had watched from behind the admissions desk while he hugged Reverend Avery and tried not to cry. She remembered the way his shoes had been polished too carefully, as if he wanted the world to believe they were new. She remembered wanting to step forward, to tell him she was proud, to say that the lunches, the tuition payments, the books, the little envelopes had come from her hands, but she had stayed hidden. A child should not carry the weight of a grown woman's sacrifice, she had told herself. Let him walk free. Let him believe grace found him without a bill attached. Now that same boy stood in front of her like a wall. Detective Harris looked toward the door, then back at Ethan. The confidence had not left his face entirely, but it had cracked around the edges. Counselor, you can make whatever threats you like, but this is an active investigation. We have hospital administrators ready to cooperate. Signed internal reports, access logs, and witness statements. Then you should have no problem preserving all of it, Ethan said. I don't need a lecture on evidence preservation. No, detective. What you need is a reminder that once counsel appears, you do not keep pressuring a frightened woman to sign a confession while she is cuffed to a table. Mr. Callahan cleared his throat. For the record, I did advise her of the offer. Ethan finally turned his head slightly, just enough to let the public defender feel the cold edge of his attention. For the record, you watched an elderly nurse get cornered by a detective using race, poverty, and widowhood as leverage. You may want to sit quietly before I start including your name in the motion. Callahan's mouth closed. Reverend Avery stepped closer to Maya, careful not to touch the cuffs without permission. Child, breathe. Maya tried. Her lungs stuttered around the air. Ethan looked back at her, and the severity in his face softened. Miss Maya, do you consent to me representing you? She stared at him. Ethan, I don't have money for a lawyer like you. His expression changed then, not into pity, but something deeper, heavier. You paid enough for me a long time ago. Maya's eyes flew to Reverend Avery. The pastor's face told her what she already feared. The envelope had opened more than receipts. It had opened the past. Pastor, she whispered. I'm sorry, he said gently, but some secrets are holy only until they are needed for justice. Ethan reached for the old envelope on the table. Harris moved as if to stop him, but Ethan's eyes cut toward him. The detective froze. Ethan untied the string and pulled out the yellowed papers with the care of someone handling the bones of his own childhood. A receipt from Dunbar Preparatory Academy, a lunch account statement, a church fund ledger with monthly deposits, a handwritten note to the school office asking that the donor remain anonymous. At the bottom, in careful script, were the words he had known all his life and never understood. A friend of Street, Catherine's. Ethan's thumb brushed over the writing. When I was 11, he said quietly, not to Harris, not to Callahan, but to the room itself. My mother was dying one dialysis session at a time. I did my homework in hospital hallways because we didn't have heat some nights, and because she was afraid to leave me alone. I thought nobody saw us. Maya closed her eyes, and the years folded back. She saw him again under the flickering hallway light. His notebook balanced on his knees. She saw Denise Carter's tired smile. The gray tone of her skin after treatment, the way she would apologize for needing help as if illness were bad manners. She saw herself at 30, widowed, hollowed out, carrying folded linens past a boy who was trying to solve fractions, while his mother fought to stay alive. "You were always studying," Maya said, before she could stop herself. "Even when the vending machine was louder than your teacher should have been." Ethan looked at her. "You remember that?" "I remember you wouldn't take the apple juice until I told you it was extra." A faint, broken smile touched his mouth. "It wasn't extra, was it?" "No," Maya admitted. For a moment, the police station disappeared. There was only a hospital hallway, a hungry boy, and a young widow with half a sandwich and more grief than she knew where to put. Reverend Avery picked up the story when Maya could not. She came to Street Mark the next morning with a tin box pressed to her chest, said there was a child at the hospital who needed school money, and she wanted the church to handle it so he would never know who helped him. Detective Harris shifted, impatient, but listening despite himself. "She paid from her wages," the pastor continued. "Overtime, holiday shifts, sometimes $5, sometimes $50. When his mother passed, she kept paying. Lunch account, uniforms, application fees, debate trip, college forms. She never once asked for recognition." Harris snatched one of the pages and scanned it. "Or she used a church fund to hide unexplained transfers." Ethan's voice hardened. "Careful. I'm looking at regular payments. You're looking at a nurse's pay stubs attached to matching withdrawals," Ethan said. "You're looking at church ledger entries witnessed by Reverend Avery. You're looking at tuition receipts from my school. And if you had bothered to investigate before trying to force a confession, you would know the payments started more than 20 years before the hospital claims any drug diversion occurred." That landed. Harris looked back at the dates. Ethan leaned closer. "That means either Miss William began laundering imaginary drug money in 2002 through a church fund to help a child she never publicly claimed, or your case is built on lazy assumptions and convenient prejudice." The detective said nothing. Maya's voice trembled. "I never wanted him to know." Ethan turned fully toward her then. "Why?" She looked down at her cuffed hands. "Because your mother had already left you with too much sorrow. I didn't want gratitude to become another burden. I just wanted you to keep going." Ethan's composure almost broke. He breathed through it, slow and controlled, the way men do when they refuse to cry in front of enemies. "I did," he said. "I kept going." Maya's tears spilled silently. Ethan turned back to Harris. "Remove the cuffs." Harris frowned. "She is still in custody. She is a 50-something-year-old nurse with no weapon, no flight risk, and counsel present. Remove the cuffs, or I add unnecessary restraint to the filing." For a long second, nobody moved. Then Harris jerked his chin toward the corner. An officer stepped forward, unlocked one cuff, then the other. The metal fell away from Maya's wrists, leaving angry red half-moons in her skin. She rubbed them slowly, as if she did not quite believe her hands belonged to her again. Ethan saw the marks. His face went still. "Now," he said, "I want the arrest file." Harris grabbed the folder and slapped it on the table. "There, all of it. That is what we have here." "No," Ethan said. "That is what you brought into the room to scare her. I want the warrant request, probable cause statement, chain of custody on the hospital footage, original complaint, all witness names, all digital access logs, and the communication record between your department and Street Catherine's administration." Harris stared at him. "That will take time. You have 9 minutes." The detective's nostrils flared. He stepped out and barked an order into the hallway. The door swung half shut behind him, and for the first time since her arrest, Maya was not being shouted at. Mr. Callahan gathered his briefcase with the defeated movements of a man eager to vanish. "I suppose my services are no longer required." Ethan did not look at him. "Correct." When Callahan left, Reverend Avery lowered himself into the chair beside Maya. "Lord knows, I never thought the boy from that hallway would come walking into a police station like David before Goliath." Ethan smiled faintly, but his eyes remained on the file. "David had a sling. I have subpoenas." Maya let out a small sound that was almost a laugh, but it broke into a sob. She covered her mouth. Ethan knelt beside her chair, lowering himself so he was not towering over her. "Miss Maya, listen to me carefully. They are going to try to make this bigger before it gets better. If Catherine's framed you, they didn't do it because of one missing bottle. They did it because you were useful to them. Poor, black, widowed, trusted by patients, but not protected by power." Maya whispered, "I told them Sarah borrowed my ID badge. I heard, and Elaine knew. I heard that too. I should have said something before. You said enough tonight." She shook her head. "No. I let them push me for years. I thought if I stayed kind, if I worked hard, if I didn't answer back, people would see the truth." Ethan looked at the confession lying beneath his business card. "Kindness is holy, Miss Maya, but it is not a security system." Reverend Avery murmured, "Amen." Ethan stood as footsteps returned in the hallway. His face settled back into the calm, dangerous expression of a lawyer preparing for war. Detective Harris entered with another stack of papers, thinner than Ethan had requested and thicker than Harris wanted to admit. He dropped it on the table. "This is preliminary," Harris said. Ethan opened the file. His eyes moved quickly across the top sheet, then the second, then the third. His brow tightened. "What is it?" Maya asked. Ethan did not answer right away. He turned one page toward the light and stared at the timestamp printed beside Maya's alleged pharmacy access. Then he looked at Harris. "Detective," Ethan said quietly, "according to this log, Miss William entered the restricted medication room at 8:43 p.m. "That's right." Ethan turned to Maya. "Where were you at 8:43? Maya blinked. "Room 214. A stroke patient coded. Nurse Jenkins was with me. So was Dr. Patel." Ethan looked back down at the file. The first crack had opened. "Then we start there," he said. Ethan did not raise his voice when he said it, but something in the room tightened around the words. "Then we start there." It was not a promise made for comfort. It was a battle line. Detective Harris looked down at the access log, as if the numbers might rearrange themselves if he stared long enough. "People misremember times," he said. "Machines don't," Ethan replied. "At least that is what you were telling Miss William 10 minutes ago." Harris's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. Ethan turned the page toward him and tapped the printed timestamp. "Your entire accusation begins with this entry. 8:43 p.m. Restricted medication room. Badge access. Under Maya Williams' ID. But my client says she was in room 214 during a code. A code produces records. Nurses document it. Doctors sign off. Monitors store time. Medication carts log emergency use. If she was in that room, your pharmacy entry is either wrong, manipulated, or someone used her badge." Maya stood beside the table, rubbing the red marks on her wrists. Hearing him say it so plainly made her feel both safer and more terrified. For years, she had learned to doubt herself in rooms where people with titles spoke louder than truth. But Ethan was not asking anyone to trust her memory alone. He was reaching for the places where the truth had left footprints. Detective Harris shut the folder. "Hospital provided us with their internal report. We acted on it." "That is not an investigation," Ethan said. "That is delivery service." The detective's jaw flexed. "Careful, counselor. I am being careful. That is why I am telling you exactly what I will ask a federal judge to review if this file is not preserved by morning." Reverend Avery sat quietly beside Maya, but his hand rested over the old envelope as though guarding a flame from wind. He looked at Ethan with the kind of sorrowful pride older men reserved for children they had watched suffer and survive. Harris pulled his phone from his pocket and stepped toward the corner of the room. "This is Detective Harris," he said into it. "I need someone to contact Street Catherine's records department. Now, tell them we need confirmation on an emergency response in room 214 at 8:43 tonight." He paused, listening. "Yes, tonight. And tell them not to alter or purge anything. No, I don't care if legal wants a request in writing. Tell them it's coming." Ethan watched him closely. "Put that instruction in writing." Harris covered the phone with his palm. "You want to run my investigation too?" "No," Ethan said. "I want to prevent one from being buried." That word buried moved through Maya like cold water. She thought of the basement records room at Street. Catherine's, where old patient files were stacked in cardboard boxes beside broken IV poles and Christmas decorations no one had used since before the pandemic. She thought of computer screens turning black when supervisors walked by. She thought of Elaine Porter leaning too close at the nurse's station, her perfume sharp and expensive, saying, "Maya, sweetheart, sign these before you leave. Pharmacy wants them reconciled by morning." Maya had signed too many things in a hurry, too many nights, too tired to ask questions. The realization made her stomach turn. Ethan seemed to read it on her face. "Miss Maya," he said gently, "did anyone at the hospital ever ask you to sign medication forms before they were fully filled out?" Maya looked at Reverend Avery, then at Ethan. "Elaine did." Harris lowered the phone slowly. Ethan did not turn away from Maya. "How often?" "At first? Not often. Maybe once every few weeks. She would say the system was slow or pharmacy was backed up. Then it became more regular, especially after Dr. Langford started those new cost control audits." "Cost control audits?" Ethan asked. Maya nodded. "He called them efficiency measures. Said too much medication was being wasted. Said nurses had to document everything faster, cleaner. But we were short-staffed. Always short-staffed. Some nights we had one nurse, covering rooms that should have had two. Elaine would come around near the end of a shift with a clipboard and say, 'Just initial here. Maya, I'll fill in the lot numbers later.'" "And you trusted her?" Maya's lips tightened with shame. "She was my supervisor." "No," Ethan said softly. "That is not shame on you. That is power." Detective Harris returned to the table, but he was listening now in a different way. Not kindly, not yet, but differently. "Who is Elaine Porter exactly?" "Nursing supervisor," Maya said. "Third floor and medication compliance." "And Sarah?" Ethan asked. "Nurse Sarah Whitcomb. She worked nights. Younger than me. Always dressed like she was going somewhere better after work. She liked to joke that nurses with my pay grade should be grateful for overtime." Maya swallowed. "She borrowed my badge the night they say I went into the medication room." Harris frowned. "Borrowed it how?" "She said her scanner access was glitching, and Elaine needed an inventory check before morning. I was helping move a patient, and she said she would bring it right back. I know I shouldn't have let her take it." Ethan held up one hand before guilt could swallow her whole. "Did Sarah return the badge?" "Yes, maybe 15 minutes later. I was in room 214 by then. She clipped it back to the pocket of my scrub top herself and laughed because my hands were full." "What did she say?" Maya closed her eyes, searching. She said, "See? No harm done, Miss St. Maya." Reverend Avery's expression darkened. Ethan wrote the words in a small notebook he had taken from his briefcase. His handwriting was neat, controlled. "Detective, I want Nurse Sarah Whitcomb's schedule, badge access history, phone location if available through warrant, and any communication between Sarah Whitcomb and Elaine Porter in the last 72 hours. Harris gave him a hard look. "You don't get to demand private phone data without process. Then start the process. Unless you are only interested in evidence that points one direction." Before Harris could answer, his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, stepped aside, and answered. His face gave nothing away at first. Then, his brow lowered. "Say that again." He listened longer this time. "Room 214. Had a code blue at 8:41. Another pause. "Who documented?" He looked toward Maya. "Dr. Patel, Nurse Jenkins, and Maya William." His eyes flicked to Ethan. "Send that to me. Now." For the first time that night, silence did not belong to the police. Maya put a hand against the back of the chair. Her knees weakened, not from fear this time, but from the sudden pain of being believed by a timestamp before she had been believed as a woman. Ethan did not smile. He simply closed the file. "There is your first problem, detective." Harris ended the call and stood very still. "It does not clear her of everything," he said. "No," Ethan replied. "It clears her of being in the medication room when your strongest document says she was there. That means someone else used her access, or someone altered the log. Either way, your case just stopped being simple." Maya whispered. "They knew." Ethan turned to her. "Who?" She looked toward the mirrored wall, seeing not her reflection but the fluorescent corridors of Street Catherine's, the polished shoes of Dr. Victor Langford, the way he smiled for donors and ignored the old woman crying over a discharge bill, the hospital, Dr. Langford, Elaine. They knew where I was. They had to know. Codes are documented. Everybody knows that. Harris said, "Why would a hospital frame a nurse?" Maya gave a small, bitter laugh that did not sound like her. "Because hospitals are buildings, detective. People run them, and people can lie." Ethan's eyes stayed on Harris. "Dr. Victor Langford, tell me what you have on him." Harris looked annoyed. "He is the chief administrator. He reported the loss after internal compliance flagged missing controlled substances. Convenient. He has a clean reputation. So did half the men I have sued." Maya sank slowly into the chair. Now that the cuffs were off, the exhaustion came harder. Her hands were free, but freedom in that room was fragile. It depended on papers, phone calls, men choosing not to ignore what sat in front of them. Reverend Avery leaned closer. "Maya, did you ever report anything strange before tonight?" She hesitated. Ethan noticed. "Miss Maya, I kept notes," she said. Harris straightened. "What kind of notes?" "In my prayer journal." She looked embarrassed again, as if handwriting truth in private were childish. "I wrote down dates when medication counts felt wrong. Patients who said they never signed forms. Times Elaine made me initial blank lines. I filed a complaint once, about 6 months ago." "With who?" Ethan asked. "Hospital administration." Ethan's eyes sharpened. "Langford's office?" Maya nodded. "What happened?" "Nothing. Elaine called me in a week later and said I was creating confusion during a difficult budget season. After that, my shifts got worse." Harris muttered. "You have this journal?" "In my locker at Street Catherine's." Ethan looked at him immediately. "Seal her locker." Harris hesitated. Ethan stepped closer to the table, his voice lowering. "Detective, if that journal disappears after you were informed of its existence, I will make sure every word of this conversation is read in open court." Harris stared at him for 3 long seconds, then grabbed his phone again. "This is Harris. Send a unit to Street Catherine's. Secure Maya Williams' employee locker. Nobody opens it. Nobody from hospital administration touches it. Understood?" Maya let out a breath she had been holding. But across town, inside Street Catherine's Memorial, the night shift moved under bright white lights. And somewhere behind the nurses' station, Elaine Porter stood over a computer screen with her arms folded, watching as Dr. Victor Langford's name flashed across her phone. When she answered, his voice was smooth, quiet, and cold. "Elaine," he said, "we may have a problem." She looked toward the row of employee lockers at the end of the hall. One of them had Maya Williams' name taped neatly above the handle. Elaine Porter did not move for several seconds after Dr. Langford's call ended. She stood behind the nurses' station with the phone still pressed to her ear, staring down the corridor toward the employee lockers as if one of them had started breathing. The night shift at Street Catherine's Memorial carried on around her. Monitors beeped behind half-closed doors. A transport orderly pushed an empty wheelchair past the desk. Somewhere in room 218, an elderly woman called weakly for water. Nurses moved with the tired rhythm of people who had been on their feet too long, their shoes squeaking softly against the polished floor. To anyone walking by, the hospital looked like it always did at midnight, overworked, underfunded, alive by fluorescent light. But Elaine knew better. A hospital could look clean while rotting from the inside. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Dr. Langford. "Do not let police access that locker before we know what is inside." Elaine swallowed. Her reflection stared back from the dark glass of the nurse's station window. Smooth blonde hair pinned tightly, pearl earrings, white supervisor's coat, face pale beneath the makeup. She had spent years building the image of competence. Women like Elaine did not panic in front of staff. They corrected charts, approved overtime, smiled at donors, and made sure blame landed where it was supposed to land. Still, her fingers trembled as she typed back. "A detective already called. They are sending officers." Langford answered almost immediately. "Then move faster. Elaine slipped the phone into her pocket and walked toward the lockers. Maya Williams' locker was third from the end, the old beige one with a strip of tape above the handle. Maya had written her name in blue marker years ago, careful and plain. M. William. No stickers, no family photos, no little magnets with beach vacations or grandchildren, just her name. A spare cardigan folded on top, and the quiet dignity of a woman who never took up more space than she was allowed. That had always irritated Elaine. Maya never demanded anything, never played politics, never flattered the right people, and still patients asked for her by name. Families brought her pound cake in foil. Old men who cursed at everyone else softened when she entered. Doctors who ignored half the nursing staff would say, "Where's Maya? She knows this patient." Elaine had authority. Maya had trust. Trust was harder to forgive. Sarah Whitcomb appeared at the far end of the hall, carrying a medication tray she did not need. Her white sneakers were spotless, her hair pulled into a sleek ponytail, her phone tucked into the waistband of her scrubs. She looked young, polished, and frightened in a way she was trying to hide. Elaine hissed her name. "Sarah." Sarah came quickly. "What happened?" "Lower your voice. Langford called me too. He said the police might be coming back." "They are." Sarah looked toward Maya's locker. "Did she tell them?" "She told them enough." Sarah cursed under her breath. "I told you borrowing her badge was stupid." Elaine's eyes flashed. "You told me it was easy." "It was easy until she got herself a federal lawyer." Elaine stepped close enough that Sarah could smell her perfume, sharp and expensive. "Listen to me. Maya William is in police custody. She has no money, no family, no credibility. We are not going to fall apart because some lawyer shouted in an interview room. He's Ethan Carter," Sarah whispered. "I looked him up. Civil rights attorney, federal cases. He sued the city last year and won." Elaine's stomach tightened, but her voice stayed cold. "Then we make sure he has nothing to work with." She pulled a ring of master keys from her coat pocket. Sarah's eyes widened. "You can't open it now. Cameras are right there." Elaine glanced up toward the ceiling. The small black dome above the locker hallway reflected the fluorescent lights. "Camera on this hall has been freezing all week. Maintenance ticket is still open." "You said maintenance fixed it." "I said they filed the ticket." Sarah stared at her. "What if it's recording? Then stand in front of me and pretend to ask about staffing." Sarah hesitated, then stepped into position, blocking most of Elaine's body from the camera. Elaine slid the key into Maya's locker. It opened with a soft metal pop. Inside was exactly what Elaine expected, and somehow worse. A navy cardigan, a worn pair of black work shoes with cracked soles, a small bottle of hand lotion, a bus pass, a framed photograph of a man in a city bus driver's uniform, his smile gentle beneath a navy cap, a paper bag with 2 oatmeal cookies inside, and on the lower shelf, beneath a folded scarf, was a black journal with a small silver cross stamped into the cover. Elaine's breath caught. Sarah leaned closer. "Is that it?" Elaine picked it up. It was heavier than she expected, swollen with folded papers and sticky notes. When she opened it, she saw dates, names, medication discrepancies, initials, questions, prayers written in the margins. "Lord, help me understand why the count is short again. Mr. Holloway says he signed nothing today. Elaine asked me to initial blank narcotic reconciliation sheet. I should not have done it. I was tired. Sarah borrowed badge at 8:31 p.m. Said Elaine approved inventory check." Elaine snapped the book shut as if it had burned her. Sarah saw enough. "Oh God, don't say that here. What do we do?" Elaine looked down the hall. Nurse Jenkins was at the far station, speaking to a patient's daughter. An orderly disappeared into the elevator. The officers had not arrived yet. "We take it to Langford." "What about the police order?" Elaine's lips thinned. "There is no order until an officer is standing in front of me with paperwork." Sarah's face had gone pale. "Elaine, this is obstruction." Elaine turned on her. "No, obstruction was when you used her badge and then kept texting me from your own phone like an idiot. Obstruction is leaving a trail because you wanted new handbags and weekend trips while pretending you were too good for night shift wages." Sarah recoiled. "You said everyone was getting paid." You said Langford had it handled, and he will, if we stop making mistakes. A voice behind them said, "What are you doing in Maya's locker?" Both women turned. Nurse Jenkins stood near the medication cart, holding a clipboard against her chest. She was in her 60s, with tired brown eyes and gray at her temples. She had worked with Maya for nearly 20 years, long enough to know the difference between hospital gossip and hospital rot. Elaine recovered first. Administrative inventory. Miss William is under investigation. At midnight? Given the circumstances, yes. Jenkins looked at the journal in Elaine's hand. That looks personal. It may be evidence. Then police should take it. Sarah shifted nervously. Elaine smiled, but the smile had no warmth. Nurse Jenkins, I know you are close to Maya. That makes this painful. But interfering in an active internal investigation could affect your position. Jenkins did not move. I was in room 214 with Maya at 8:43. Elaine's smile faded. Jenkins continued, quietly but clearly. Dr. Patel was there too. So was the patient's daughter. Maya wasn't anywhere near the medication room. Sarah looked down. Elaine stepped forward. You should be very careful about what you think you remember. Codes are chaotic. People get confused. Not about Maya, Jenkins said. For a moment, the corridor seemed to hold its breath. Then elevator doors opened at the end of the hall. 2 uniformed officers stepped out with a hospital security guard hurrying behind them. Elaine shoved the journal under the stack of staffing papers in her arm, but Jenkins saw. The officers approached. Elaine Porter? Elaine lifted her chin. Yes, I'm Officer Daniels. Detective Harris instructed us to secure Maya Williams' employee locker. No one is to remove or disturb any contents. Elaine smiled with professional offense. Of course. We take chain of custody very seriously here. Nurse Jenkins spoke before fear could stop her. She already opened it. Elaine turned slowly. Excuse me? Jenkins pointed at the papers in Elaine's arms. And she took something out. Sarah whispered. Jenkins, don't. Officer Daniels looked at Elaine. Ma'am, put down what you're holding. This is a staffing schedule. Put it down. Elaine's hand tightened around the journal hidden underneath. For one reckless second, she considered refusing. Then she saw Jenkins's face, Sarah's fear, the officers watching, and knew the hallway had become too bright for lies that large. She laid the papers on the counter. The black prayer journal slid out from beneath them and landed on top. Officer Daniels looked at the silver cross on the cover, then at Maya's open locker. His expression changed. Ma'am, he said. Step away from the locker. Elaine did. Slowly. Sarah began to cry without making a sound. At the police station, Ethan was still reviewing the preliminary file when Detective Harris's phone rang again. Harris answered with irritation, but within seconds, his face went rigid. What do you mean the locker was already open? Maya gripped the arms of her chair. Ethan looked up. Harris listened, then closed his eyes for half a second. Secure the journal. Bag it. Body camera on. Nobody from hospital administration touches anything else. He ended the call. Ethan's voice was quiet. Problem? Harris stared at the phone as if it had betrayed him. Officers arrived at Street Catherine's. Elaine Porter had already opened your client's locker. Maya's hand went to her mouth. Ethan stood. What did she remove? Harris looked at Maya, then at Ethan. The answer seemed to cost him something. A prayer journal, Reverend Avery whispered. Thank you, Lord. Maya closed her eyes, but tears slipped out anyway. Not because she was safe. Not yet. Safety was still a long road away. But the little black book she had written in after midnight shifts, the book where she had poured doubts she was too afraid to speak, had not disappeared into some hospital shredder or locked office drawer. Ethan leaned over the table, both hands flat on the file. Detective, your suspect just became a whistleblower, and your star witness just got caught tampering with evidence. Harris did not answer. Outside, thunder rolled over Baltimore, low and distant. Inside the interrogation room, the confession still lay on the metal table beneath Ethan Carter's gold-edged card, but it no longer looked like a doorway to prison. It looked like the first lie that was beginning to die. Detective Harris sat down slowly. the weight of the last phone call settling across his shoulders like a coat he no longer wanted to wear. For most of that night, he had moved through the case as if every fact pointed in one direction. Maya William was poor. Maya William was alone. Maya Williams' badge had opened the medication room. Maya Williams' name appeared on forms tied to missing drugs and money. The hospital had handed him a clean story, and he had accepted it because clean stories made arrests easier. But now, there was a journal. Now there was an open locker. Now Elaine Porter, the nursing supervisor who had helped build the case against Maya, had been caught with her hands inside the one place she had no business touching. Ethan Carter watched Harris in silence. Good lawyers knew when to speak, but great ones knew when silence forced another man to listen to himself. Maya sat beside Reverend Avery, both hands folded together to hide their shaking. Without the cuffs, she looked smaller somehow, not weaker, but more human. The red marks around her wrists had darkened. Her eyes were swollen from tears she had tried too long to hold back. Still, her back was straight. Something had changed in her after she refused to sign. Fear had not left her, but it no longer sat alone inside her chest. It had company now. Anger, faith, and the faint, fragile beginning of hope. Harris opened the file again, though he seemed less certain of what he wanted to find. "The journal will be brought here," he said. "If it contains what she says it contains, we will review it." "No," Ethan said. Harris looked up. "Excuse me? You will not review it alone. That journal belongs to my client. It may contain privileged personal writing, medical observations, names of patients, and potential whistleblower evidence. It will be logged, photographed, copied, and reviewed with counsel present. Chain of custody begins with the officers who secured it, not with Street. Catherine's, not with your desk, and definitely not with anyone connected to Dr. Langford." Harris stared at him for a moment, then rubbed a hand over his jaw. "You don't make this easy. Neither did you, when you tried to scare a widow into confessing." The detective had no quick answer for that. Reverend Avery leaned toward Maya and murmured, "You hear that, child? The truth has legs now." Maya gave the faintest nod, but her eyes remained on Ethan. She was still trying to place the boy inside the man. The Ethan she remembered had sat beneath hospital lights with his knees pulled close, holding a pencil like it was the last thing the world had not taken from him. This Ethan stood in polished shoes, commanding police officers, naming laws as if they were tools in his hand. And yet, when he looked at her, she saw the same careful tenderness. The same child who had once said, "Thank you, ma'am," over half a turkey sandwich, as though she had placed a feast before him. Ethan turned another page in the file. "Detective. Who made the first report to police?" "Hospital Compliance Office." "Name." Harris checked the form. Dr. Victor Langford signed the formal referral. Elaine Porter attached the nursing compliance notes. "And Nurse Sarah Whitcomb, listed as a witness." Ethan's eyes sharpened. "What did she witness?" Harris read from the page. "She states that Miss William frequently stayed behind after shifts, appeared nervous around medication counts, and had unexplained conversations with patients regarding financial assistance." Maya let out a small, broken laugh. Harris looked at her. "Something funny?" "No," she said. "Just familiar." Ethan's voice softened. "Tell me." Maya looked down at her hands. "Sarah used to tease me about talking to patients too long. She said I acted like Street Catherine's was a church basement instead of a hospital. If a patient didn't understand a bill, I tried to explain who they could call. If an old man needed a ride home, I asked social services. If a mother didn't have lunch money for her child in the waiting room, I found something from the break room. Sarah said I was making the rest of them look bad. Did you ever discuss hospital funds with patients? I helped them fill out forms. That was part of my job when no caseworker was available. Everybody knew that. Who approved those forms? Elaine. Sometimes Langford's office. Ethan made another note. So the same administrators now accusing you of misusing assistance funds approved your access to those funds. Maya nodded slowly, as if saying it aloud made the trap visible for the first time. Yes. Harris shifted in his chair. Or she had access and abused it. Ethan looked at him. Or someone used a trusted nurse's routine duties. to hide their own theft. The door opened before Harris could respond. Officer Daniels entered with a sealed evidence bag, his body camera still clipped and blinking on his chest. Inside the clear plastic was the black prayer journal with the silver cross on the cover. The sight of it made Maya press her fingers to her lips. Officer Daniels placed it on the table. Recovered from Miss Williams' locker. Locker was open when we arrived. Nurse Elaine Porter had removed this item and placed it beneath staffing papers. Nurse Linda Jenkins witnessed the removal and stated Porter opened the locker before police arrived. My body cam recorded the recovery. Ethan nodded. Was the locker otherwise disturbed? Appeared, partially searched. We photographed everything before sealing it. There were personal items, a photograph, bus pass, shoes, cardigan, food bag. No medication, no cash, no documents other than what was inside the journal. Harris's face tightened at the words, no medication, no cash. Ethan pointed to the evidence bag. Log it with time, location, and recovering officer. I want a copy of the body camera footage preserved. Officer Daniels looked at Harris. Harris hesitated, then gave one curt nod. When Daniels left, Maya stared at the journal as if it were an old friend wounded but alive. I wrote in that after shifts, she said quietly. Sometimes I was so tired I could barely hold the pen. I didn't know what else to do. When something felt wrong, I wrote it down. When a patient said they never signed something, I wrote it down. When the count was off and Elaine told me not to worry, I wrote it down. Ethan asked, "May I open it?" Maya looked at the sealed bag, then at him. "Yes," Harris said. "It's evidence. It is my client's property," Ethan replied. "And she has consented to review in counsel's presence." Harris looked as if he wanted to argue, then decided the night had already given him enough problems. He called Daniels back in to open the seal properly and begin a documented review. A camera was placed on the table. The journal was photographed front and back. Each page would be handled with gloves, copied, and numbered. Ethan insisted on it. Harris tolerated it. Reverend Avery watched with bowed head, as if the little book were a testimony. The first pages were prayers. "Lord, give me patience with Mrs. Bell's son. He is angry because he is scared. Lord, let Mr. Holloway's daughter arrive before morning if you can make a way. Samuel, I missed you today when the rain started. Bus number 43 passed the hospital, and I thought of your hands on the wheel." Maya turned her face away. Ethan paused on that line, then moved carefully to the dated notes tucked farther in. January 12. Morphine count short by 2 vials. Elaine said pharmacy error. Told me not to document until morning. February 3. Sarah had new designer purse. Joked she finally found better money than overtime. February 18. Patient Holloway upset. Says signature on assistance form is not his. Elaine took form from me and said she would handle it. March 5. Dr. Langford announced new audit. Nurses told to reconcile faster. Too many blank lines. I feel uneasy. March 22. Sarah borrowed my ID badge at 8:31 p.m. Said Elaine approved inventory check. Returned it near room 214 after code began. I should ask about this tomorrow. The room went quiet. Harris leaned closer. March 22 is tonight. Maya nodded. I wrote that during my break after the code. Before they arrested me, I didn't know it would matter. Ethan looked at Harris. It matters. Harris's eyes stayed on the page. For the first time since Maya had met him, he looked less like a man trying to prove a case, and more like a man realizing someone had handed him a loaded weapon and told him it was a flashlight. Ethan turned the next page. March 23. If anything happens to me, check Elaine's reconciliation sheets. Check Sarah's badge history. Check Langford's private clinic partnership. I asked too many questions. Harris's head lifted. Private clinic partnership? Maya frowned. I don't know all of it. I heard Elaine and Sarah talking near the break room. Something about a pain management clinic outside the city and unused inventory. When I walked in, they stopped. Ethan's expression hardened. Name of the clinic? Maya closed her eyes, searching memory through exhaustion. Harbor Light Pain Management, I think. Or Harbor Line. Something like that. Harris wrote it down despite himself. Ethan saw that and let him. Then Harris's phone buzzed again. He checked the screen, and whatever he read erased the last of his irritation. Street Catherine's legal counsel just contacted the department, he said slowly. They're requesting that all hospital-related evidence be returned to internal compliance pending their own review. Ethan laughed once, without humor. Absolutely not. Harris was already staring at the message. They say the material contains protected hospital information. They should have thought about that before framing a nurse with it. Maya flinched at the word framing. Not because it was false, but because it named what she had been afraid to believe. Ethan closed the journal carefully. Detective, you now have evidence that Maya William could not have been in the medication room at the alleged time. Evidence that her supervisor attempted to remove her journal before police secured it. And contemporaneous notes naming the same people involved in the hospital's complaint. If you continue treating her as the primary suspect, you will be choosing blindness. Harris stood. He walked to the mirror, placed both hands on his hips, and stared at his own reflection. In that glass, he looked older. Finally, he turned back. Miss William, he said, and the title sounded different now, less like a formality and more like an apology he was not yet ready to give. You are not being charged tonight. Maya blinked. What? You are still part of an active investigation, but given what has come in, I am not processing you into holding on these charges tonight. Reverend Avery whispered, Thank you, Jesus. Ethan did not relax. She leaves with me. Harris nodded once. She leaves with counsel, but she needs to remain available. She will, Ethan said. And so will I. Maya slowly stood. Her legs trembled beneath her. For a moment, she looked down at the confession still lying on the table. Ethan's gold-edged business card covered the signature line like a small shield. She reached toward the paper. Ethan said gently, Miss Maya, I'm not signing it, she said. Then, with 2 fingers, she slid the confession back across the table toward Detective Harris. The gesture was small, quiet, almost polite, but for Maya William, it felt like pushing a stone off her chest. Harris took the paper and did not meet her eyes. Outside the interrogation room, the station hallway looked the same as before. Gray walls, tired officers, bad coffee, wet footprints drying on the tile. Yet Maya felt as if she had stepped out of one life and into another, one where the floor might still collapse beneath her, but at least she was no longer walking alone. Ethan walked beside her. Reverend Avery carried the envelope. Officer Daniels carried the sealed copy, request for the journal. No one spoke until they reached the front doors. Rain fell over Baltimore in silver sheets. Maya stopped beneath the station awning. The cold air touched her face, and she realized she had not been outside since they dragged her from the hospital. Ethan removed his overcoat and placed it gently around her shoulders. She looked up at him. I don't know how to thank you. He watched the rain for a moment before answering. When I was a boy, someone paid for me to stay in school. Someone made sure I ate lunch. Someone wrote letters so I could become more than what poverty had planned for me. Maya's throat tightened. Ethan turned to her, his eyes bright but steady. Tonight, I think I finally met her. Maya looked away, tears filling her eyes. Before she could answer, Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. His face changed. What is it? Reverend Avery asked. Ethan looked toward the rain-dark street, where the lights of the city blurred red and white against the pavement. Local news just ran the hospital's statement, he said. They're calling Maya the center of a charitable fraud and opioid theft investigation. Maya's hand tightened around the coat. Ethan put his phone away, his jaw set. They tried the police station first, he said. Now they're going after her name. They tried the police station first, Ethan said. Now they're going after her name. The words followed Maya all the way into Ethan's black SUV, where the leather seats smelled faintly of rain and peppermint. Reverend Avery climbed into the back with his Bible, and the old envelope pressed against his chest. Ethan sat behind the wheel but did not start the engine right away. He watched the news clip on his phone in silence, the blue-white glow cutting across his face. On the screen, Dr. Victor Langford stood beneath the polished entrance sign of Street Catherine's Memorial Hospital. He wore a charcoal suit, a hospital pin on his lapel, and the solemn expression of a man pretending grief had inconvenienced him. This is a heartbreaking betrayal, Langford told the cameras. Street Catherine's has always served vulnerable patients with dignity. When we discovered irregularities involving controlled substances and charitable funds, we immediately contacted authorities. The video cut to an old staff photograph of Maya. Not one from a good day. Not one where she was smiling beside a grateful patient or holding a Christmas toy drive box. It was her employee ID photo, tired and flat under fluorescent light, cropped so tightly that she looked more like a suspect than a nurse. A reporter's voice played over it. Sources close to the investigation say longtime nurse Maya William may have used her trusted position to divert medication and move money through church-linked accounts. Maya turned her face toward the window. Outside, Baltimore blurred in the rain. Red brake lights stretched across the street like wounds that would not close. Reverend Avery made a low sound in his throat. Lord, forgive that man. Ethan turned the phone off. He knew exactly what words to use. Vulnerable patients, church-linked accounts, trusted position. He's not just defending the hospital. He's building a story the public can hate before facts catch up. Maya's hands lay in her lap, wrapped in the sleeves of Ethan's overcoat. The cuffs were gone, but the marks remained. She rubbed one wrist with her thumb. People will believe him. Some will, Ethan said. He's educated, rich, white, runs a hospital. I'm just... She stopped before the sentence could finish wounding her. Ethan looked at her. Don't you dare complete that thought for him. Maya blinked. You are not just anything, he said. You are a nurse who kept records when everyone else trusted a system that was lying. You are a witness. You are a victim. And you may be the only reason we can prove what they've been doing. She wanted to believe him. But shame had a way of surviving even after truth arrived. Shame sat in the passenger seat with her, whispering that the whole city had seen her name beside words like opioid theft and fraud. Shame told her old patients would watch the news and wonder if the hands that changed their dressings had stolen from them too. Ethan started the SUV. I'm taking you somewhere safe tonight. My apartment, Maya said quickly. I need to go home. No, she looked at him. Not until we know who has access to it, who might be watching it, and whether reporters are outside, Ethan said. They moved fast with the hospital statement. That means they expected you to be processed tonight. They planned for you to come out ruined, not defended. Reverend Avery leaned forward from the back. She can stay at the church parsonage. There's a guest room. Sister Helen keeps clean sheets there. Ethan nodded. Good. But first I need my investigator. Maya frowned. Investigator? Lena Ortiz, Ethan said. Former public defender investigator. Best in the city at finding the thing everyone else walked past. 20 minutes later, they pulled up outside a narrow row house office near Mount Vernon. A brass plaque beside the door read, Carter Civil Rights and Criminal Defense. The windows were dark except for one lamp burning upstairs. A woman in her 40s opened the door before Ethan knocked. She had dark hair pulled into a low bun, reading glasses on top of her head, and the alert eyes of someone who had been expecting bad news for years and still refused to be surprised by it. You look like hell, she told Ethan. Good to see you too, Lena. Her eyes moved past him to Maya, then softened without becoming sentimental. Miss William? Maya nodded. I'm Lena Ortiz. Come inside before the news vans remember lawyers have offices. Inside, the office smelled of paper, coffee, and lemon cleaner. Framed newspaper clippings lined one wall. Wrongfully accused men freed. Police misconduct settlements. Civil rights cases Ethan had won. Maya saw younger versions of desperate people in those photographs, standing beside Ethan outside courthouses. She wondered how many of them had sat in rooms like hers, being told the easiest thing was to surrender. Lena guided Maya to a worn leather chair and brought her hot tea in a mug that said, World's Okayest Investigator. Reverend Avery sat nearby, Bible on his knees. Ethan removed his suit jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and spread the preliminary file across the conference table. No one wasted time. Lena read the first pages quickly. Hospital's story is too clean. That was my thought, Ethan said. Badge access, missing medication, charity fund transfers, supervisor testimony, patient complaints. That's not evidence. That's a gift basket. Maya looked between them. A what? Lena glanced up. Sorry. I mean, it looks packaged. Real cases are messy. This one has every piece pointing at you like someone arranged it for a photograph. Ethan tapped the access log. First crack. Badge says Maya entered the medication room at 8:43. Hospital records confirm she was in room 214 during a code blue at 8:41. Lena's eyebrows rose. That's not a crack. That's a broken window. Maya says nurse Sarah Whitcomb borrowed her badge at 8:31. Elaine Porter allegedly approved an inventory check. Elaine was caught tonight, removing Maya's prayer journal from her locker before police arrived. Lena let out a slow whistle. They panicked. Langford just gave a public statement framing this as opioid theft and church-linked fraud. Of course he did. Control the narrative before discovery. Lena turned to Maya. Miss William, I'm going to ask you questions that may feel uncomfortable. Not because I doubt you, but because I need to know where they will hit. Maya wrapped both hands around the warm mug. All right. Who at the hospital disliked you? Maya almost laughed. How much time do you have? Ethan's expression darkened, but Lena stayed steady. Start with the people who had access to medication records. Elaine Porter, Sarah Whitcomb, maybe Dr. Langford's compliance assistant, Mr. Vale. Pharmacy had their own staff, but nurses only saw what we were allowed to see. Did you ever complain about missing medication? Yes. In my journal, and once through an internal complaint. To whom? Langford's office. I gave it to Elaine, because she said all concerns had to go through her. Lena looked at Ethan. So, the complaint likely went straight to the people who needed it buried. Ethan nodded. Lena turned another page. Patient complaints. Do you recognize these names? Maya leaned forward. Mr. Holloway. Yes. Mrs. Dempsey. Yes. Mr. Alvarez. Yes. They would never say I stole from them. Never is dangerous. Lena said gently. But signatures can be checked. We'll need actual statements. I can talk to them. No, Ethan said immediately. Not yet. They may be contacted by the hospital first. Lena will handle witnesses. Maya's shoulders fell. I hate sitting still. Good, Lena said. Then remember everything while we move. The office phone rang. Lena answered, listened, then covered the receiver. It's Nurse Jenkins. Maya sat up. Lena put the call on speaker. A woman's tired voice filled the room. Mr. Carter, this is Ethan. This is Linda Jenkins. I worked the code with Maya tonight. I just got a call from Elaine. Ethan's eyes sharpened. What did she say? She told me the hospital would consider any unauthorized statement to outside counsel a violation of patient privacy. Then she said, people close to retirement should be careful about disciplinary records. Maya's face tightened. Linda, Jenkins continued, I'm 63 years old. I have 2 bad knees and a mortgage, but I know where Maya was at 8:43. She was beside me doing chest compressions until Dr. Patel took over. She did not leave that room. Ethan's voice softened. Are you willing to put that in a sworn statement? There was a pause. Then Jenkins said, yes, but you better hurry. They're calling everybody. Lena wrote quickly. Can you meet tomorrow morning? I'll come before my shift. And Mr. Carter? Yes? If they did this to Maya, they'll do it to anyone. The line went dead. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Ethan looked at Maya. That is how we fight them. One witness, one record, one lie at a time. Maya nodded, but tears slid down her face again. I spent so many years thinking being quiet kept the peace. Reverend Avery leaned forward. Sometimes quiet only teaches wolves where the sheep are. Ethan looked down at the file, then at the rain hitting the office window. Tonight, we secure the evidence. Tomorrow, we get Jenkins, Dr. Patel, Mr. Holloway, and the patient's daughter from room 214. Lena, pull everything you can on Sarah Whitcomb, Elaine Porter, Dr. Langford, and any outside clinic tied to Street Catherine's inventory. Already on it, Lena said, opening her laptop. Maya wiped her eyes. What do I do? Ethan closed the folder over the hospital's accusation and looked at her with the solemn respect she had not received in that interrogation room. You rest. he said. Because they wanted you broken tonight. And tomorrow they need to see that you are still standing. Maya did not sleep at the parsonage. She lay beneath a handmade quilt in the small guest room behind Street Mark Baptist Church, listening to rain tap the window and old pipes knock inside the walls. Sister Helen had left folded towels on the chair, a glass of water on the nightstand, and a plate with 2 slices of pound cake wrapped in plastic. It was the kind of care Maya had given others all her life, and receiving it made her feel exposed. On the dresser sat Ethan's overcoat, still damp at the collar. She had tried to give it back before he left, but he only shook his head and said, "Morning is soon enough." Morning came gray and cold. By 7:15, Maya was sitting in the church kitchen with Reverend Avery. He poured coffee from an old percolator that sounded like it was praying through its own exhaustion. The room smelled of buttered toast, grits, and lemon dish soap. On the wall, a bulletin board held faded flyers for food drives, youth choir rehearsal, and a handwritten card that said, "Somebody prayed for you today." Maya stared at that card until her eyes blurred. Reverend Avery set a plate in front of her. "Eat something." "I'm not hungry." That has never stopped a Baptist church from feeding anybody. Despite herself, Maya gave a small smile. Then Ethan called. His voice came through the speaker, calm but already moving. "Miss Maya, I need you to stay at the church until I say otherwise. Lena and I are starting with witnesses. Nurse Jenkins is coming to my office in 20 minutes. Doctor." Patel agreed to speak during his break. "We're trying to locate the daughter of the patient, in room 214. Maya gripped the mug. "Are they afraid?" "Yes," Ethan said. "But fear does not mean silence. Not always." There was a pause. Then Lena's voice came on. "Miss William, I also need a list of every patient named in the hospital's complaint. Anyone you remember helping with assistance forms, transportation, medication questions, anything like that. I can write it." "Good. Include little details. People remember truth better when it has texture. Who liked sugar in their coffee? Who had a granddaughter in Atlanta? Who called you by your first name?" Maya looked at Reverend Avery. "I can do that." When the call ended, she pulled a church notepad toward her and began writing names. Mr. Holloway, room 305, liked his oatmeal with brown sugar. Said his daughter worked nights. Mrs. Dempsey, COPD, always wore a purple sweater, hated hospital socks. Mr. Alvarez, dialysis, carried a rosary in his shirt pocket. Asked me to call his son in Texas. With each name, Maya felt the lie against her grow more insulting. These were not forms, not signatures, not lines in a case file. These were people whose hands she had held. Across town, Ethan's office was awake before most of Baltimore. Lena had covered the conference table with folders, sticky notes, coffee cups, and a white legal pad filled with arrows. Ethan stood near the window, reading the hospital's complaint again. Not because he believed it, but because enemies often revealed themselves in the neatness of their lies. Nurse Linda Jenkins arrived at 8:03 with a paper cup of gas station coffee and a face set in stubborn fatigue. She wore her winter coat over scrubs and walked like both knees hurt. But when Ethan offered her a chair, she shook her head. "If I sit too long, I may not get back up." Lena smiled. "Then we'll be quick." Jenkins gave her statement clearly. At 8:41 p.m., a code blue was called in room 214. Maya William was present. Maya performed chest compressions and assisted Dr. Patel. Nurse Jenkins saw Maya continuously until after 8:50. Maya did not leave the room. Maya did not have time to enter the restricted medication room. Ethan asked, "Are you willing to sign this under oath?" Jenkins took the pen. "I should have spoken up sooner. You're speaking now." She signed, then looked at Ethan. "Elaine called again this morning." "What did she say?" "That street Catherine's values, loyalty." Lena snorted softly. "That's never good." Jenkins's mouth tightened. "I told her I value sleeping at night." After Jenkins left, Dr. Sanjay Patel called from a hospital break room. His voice was low, rushed, surrounded by the clatter of vending machines and distant pages over the loudspeaker. "I cannot be involved in hospital politics," he said. "This is not politics," Ethan replied. "It is a criminal accusation against a nurse you worked beside. I know where Maya was. She was in room 214 during the code. I documented it. But, Street. Catherine's legal department sent a memo this morning warning staff not to discuss patient events without authorization. Doctor, Ethan said, that memo is designed to scare you. You can confirm whether a staff member was present during a code without exposing private medical details. I can draft it narrowly. Silence. Then Dr. Patel sighed. Maya stayed after her shift last month to sit with a patient whose son was stuck on I-95. Nobody asked her. She just stayed. I do not believe she stole medication. I need facts, not belief. You will have them, Patel said. Send me the statement. By mid-morning, Lena had located the daughter of the room 214 patient, a woman named Carla Benton, who remembered Maya because Maya had prayed with her in the hallway after her father's pulse returned. Carla was angry when she learned Maya had been accused. That nurse was sweating through her scrubs trying to save my daddy, Carla said over the phone. Whoever says she was sneaking into a drug room at the same time is lying. Ethan put his hand over the receiver and looked at Lena. Second, witness. Lena wrote it down. Third, counting Jenkins. Fourth with Patel. The first crack in the records had become a line. Then came Mr. Holloway. He lived in a small brick row house with an American flag by the door and a plastic chair on the porch. Ethan and Lena visited him just after lunch. The old man answered with a cane in one hand and suspicion in his eyes until Ethan said Maya's name. Miss Maya? Holloway said. That woman kept me from signing a discharge paper I couldn't read. Told me, Mr. Holloway, don't put your name on anything you don't understand. Lena and Ethan exchanged a glance. Inside, the house smelled of coffee, furniture polish, and menthol ointment. Family photographs lined the mantel. Holloway listened as Ethan explained the complaint bearing his name. The old man's face darkened. I never complained about Maya. I complained because somebody said I received financial assistance I never got. Maya told me she would ask about it. Did you sign this? Ethan asked, showing a copy. Holloway took his reading glasses from his shirt pocket and studied the page. That ain't my signature. Are you certain? I was a postal clerk 32 years. I know my own hand. He stood slowly and went to a desk drawer. From it, he pulled old birthday cards, insurance forms, and a church donation envelope, all signed in his careful script. You take copies, and you tell Maya old Holloway knows who treated him right. By the time Ethan and Lena returned to the office, the tidy case against Maya had begun to rot at the edges. One witness placed her in room 214. Another confirmed it. A doctor was preparing a statement. A patient denied the complaint. The journal tied Elaine, Sarah, and Langford to the very discrepancies Maya had been accused of hiding. But Langford had not been idle. At 3:20 p.m., Lena's laptop pinged with a news alert. She read the headline once, then again, and her face hardened. What? Ethan asked. She turned the screen. Street Catherine's nurse under investigation for possible charity fraud tied to church tuition payments. Maya's old kindness had entered the news. The article mentioned anonymous church funds, tuition assistance to an unnamed boy, and questions about whether patient aid money was redirected under the appearance of charity. It quoted a hospital source, saying investigators were reviewing a long pattern of suspicious generosity. Ethan's expression went still in a way Lena recognized as dangerous. They leaked the church records angle, she said. No, Ethan replied. They leaked their version of it. His phone rang. Reverend Avery, Ethan answered. The pastor's voice was strained. Reporters are outside the church. Is Maya safe? She is inside with Sister Helen, but they are shouting questions through the door, asking if church money was used to hide drug profits. Ethan closed his eyes for half a second. Then Maya's voice came faintly through the phone, not speaking to him, but to someone in the room. Don't open that door. Please don't let them film the children's pantry. Ethan opened his eyes. Langford had chosen his battlefield carefully. He was not just attacking Maya's freedom now. He was attacking the only place that had kept Ethan's childhood from collapsing. Lena was already grabbing her coat. We going? Ethan picked up the folder with Jenkins's statement, Holloway's signature samples, and the first copies from Maya's journal. Yes, he said, but not to hide. By the time Ethan's SUV turned onto the church street, 2 local news vans were parked by the curb. Reporters stood under umbrellas, cameras pointed toward Street Mark's old red doors. Through the windshield, Ethan saw Maya standing behind the frosted glass, one hand pressed to her chest. For a moment, he saw not the frightened woman from the police station, but the young nurse who had once chosen to feed a boy in a hospital hallway and never asked to be remembered. Lena looked at him. "What's the plan?" Ethan shut off the engine and gathered the files. "We give them something else to report." "We give them something else to report," Ethan said. He stepped out into the rain before Lena could answer. The reporters turned almost immediately. Cameras shifted from the church doors to the tall man in the dark coat carrying a file thick enough to make any newsroom hungry. Lena followed close behind, her expression calm, her phone already recording. She had learned long ago that when people pointed cameras at you, it was wise to point one back. A young reporter from Channel 7 pushed forward first. Microphone lifted. "Mr. Carter, is it true your client used church funds to hide money from illegal prescription sales?" Ethan stopped at the bottom of the church steps. He did not look angry. That was what made the reporters quiet faster than anger would have. He looked prepared. "My client," he said, "is Maya William, a nurse who spent more than 20 years serving the poor, the elderly, and the forgotten patients of this city. Last night, she was nearly coerced into signing a confession, while evidence in the police file already contradicted the accusation against her." The cameras moved closer. Another reporter called out, "Are you denying the church payments?" "No," Ethan said. "I am confirming them." Lena glanced at him, but did not interrupt. A murmur moved through the reporters. Ethan raised one folder. More than 20 years ago, a nurse at Street Catherine's saw a child doing homework in a hospital hallway while his mother received dialysis. That nurse quietly paid school tuition through this church so the boy would not have to drop out. She bought lunches, she helped with uniforms, she wrote scholarship letters under the name "A Friend of Street Catherine's." Those payments came from her wages, her overtime, and her own sacrifice. The Channel 7 reporter leaned in. "Who was the child?" Ethan looked toward the frosted church door. Behind the glass, Maya stood frozen, her face pale with fear. Then Ethan looked back at the cameras. "I was..." The rain seemed to grow louder. For once, no one shouted a follow-up. "My name is Ethan Carter," he continued, his voice carrying down the sidewalk. "I am a federal criminal and civil rights attorney. I am the boy whose tuition Maya William paid, and I am telling you that what Street Catherine's is calling suspicious generosity was the quietest act of mercy I have ever known." Inside the church, Maya covered her mouth. Reverend Avery stood beside her, one hand on her shoulder. "Let it be told now, child," he said softly, not as shame, as truth. Outside, the reporters found their voices again. "Mr. Carter, are you saying the hospital fabricated the charges?" "I am saying the hospital's timeline is already contradicted by its own emergency records. At the exact time Maya William was accused of entering a restricted medication room, multiple witnesses and a documented code blue place her in room 214, assisting a patient in crisis." Another reporter asked, "Do you have proof?" Ethan opened the folder but did not hand it over. "Sworn statements are being prepared. We also have evidence that Maya Williams' employee locker was opened by her nursing supervisor after police were instructed to secure it. A prayer journal was removed and concealed under staffing papers before officers arrived." That landed harder. Lena saw the reporters look at one another. A coerced confession was one story. A hospital supervisor touching evidence was another. But a nurse paying for the education of the attorney now defending her, that was the kind of story that could turn a city's head. Ethan did not overplay it. He knew public sympathy was useful, but facts won cases. "We are asking the Baltimore Police Department, the Maryland Attorney General's office, and all relevant medical oversight authorities to preserve hospital records immediately. That includes original camera footage, badge access logs, narcotic reconciliation sheets, charity fund records, and all communications involving Dr. Victor Langford, Elaine Porter, and Nurse Sarah Whitcomb." A reporter near the back asked, "Are those people suspects?" They are people whose conduct requires investigation, Ethan said. Lena almost smiled. Clean. Answer. Then, the church door opened. Maya stepped out. Every camera swung toward her. The sudden movement made her flinch, but she kept walking. Reverend Avery moved beside her with an umbrella, though the wind pushed rain across her face anyway. She still wore the plain cardigan Sister Helen had given her over the pale blue scrubs she had never had a chance to change. Her hair was pulled back loosely. Her wrists bore the red marks from the cuffs. Ethan turned. Miss Maya, you don't have to do this. She looked at him, and for a moment the whole sidewalk disappeared. I hid kindness once because I thought it was better that way. I will not hide from a lie. Ethan stepped aside. Maya faced the cameras. Her voice was not loud, but people leaned in to hear it. My name is Maya William. I have been a nurse most of my life. I have cleaned wounds, held hands, changed sheets, prayed beside beds, and ridden home on buses after midnight with my feet so swollen I could barely get my shoes off. She took a breath. I did help a boy through church funds. I helped him because his mother was dying, because he was hungry, and because no child should lose his future while sitting in a hospital hallway. The Channel 7 reporter softened. Did you use hospital money? No, Maya said. I used my paycheck. I used overtime. I used grocery money some weeks. I used money I could have spent on winter coats, shoes, and repairs to my apartment. I never stole from patients. I never sold medication. And I will not let a hospital that ignored my warnings turn my kindness into a crime. That sentence went clean into every microphone. Lena looked toward Ethan. He gave the smallest nod. Maya had just done what no press release could do. She had spoken like herself. But inside St. Catherine's Memorial, Dr. Victor Langford was watching the live feed from his office, with the blinds closed. Elaine Porter stood near his desk, arms crossed so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Sarah Whitcomb sat in a leather chair by the window, her mascara smudged from crying. Langford did not look at either of them. He watched Maya's face on the screen, then Ethan's. You told me she would sign, he said. Elaine swallowed. She was about to, and yet she did not, because Carter showed up, Sarah said, voice thin. He just told the whole city she paid his tuition. Langford muted the television. The office fell into a silence, thick with expensive carpet and hidden panic. He turned to Sarah. Did you use her badge? Sarah stared at him. You know I did. I asked whether you used it in a way that can be proven. Elaine's voice sharpened. Victor. He looked at her. Do not Victor me. Police caught you removing her journal from the locker. You told me to move faster. I told you not to be seen. Sarah began to cry again. We should stop. We should just say there was a mistake. Langford laughed once, quietly. A mistake? Controlled substances missing, charity funds routed through consulting accounts, falsified assistance forms, and now a civil rights attorney asking for my communications? That is not a mistake, Sarah. That is prison, if handled poorly. Elaine went pale. What do we do? Langford walked to his desk and picked up his phone. We widen the case. What does that mean? It means Maya William does not get to be one innocent nurse with one heroic lawyer. She becomes part of a larger fraud investigation. Church funds, patient assistance, unauthorized tuition payments, questionable relationships with vulnerable families. His eyes moved back to the paused image of Maya. The public may admire charity, but prosecutors distrust irregular money. Sarah whispered. There isn't enough. Then find enough. Elaine shook her head. The journal names us. Then we discredit the journal. Emotional writing, personal grievance, unverified notes from a nurse under financial stress. He dialed. Elaine watched him, fear turning slowly into anger. Who are you calling? Councilman Bell's office, Langford said. He has influence with the health committee, police oversight, and half the donors keeping this hospital open. He needs this contained as much as we do. On the church steps, Maya finished speaking. Ethan guided her back inside before reporters could swallow her whole. Once the doors closed, her strength left so suddenly that she had to grip the back of a pew. Sister Helen hurried over. Sit down, baby. Maya sank onto the pew, shaking. Did I make it worse? Ethan crouched in front of her. No. You told the truth. The truth doesn't always protect people. No, he said. But lies hate daylight. His phone buzzed again. Then Lena's. Then Reverend Avery's office phone began ringing down the hallway. Lena checked her screen. Hospital just released a second statement. Ethan's face hardened. Read it. Lena read aloud. Disgust growing with every line. Street. Catherine's has uncovered evidence suggesting that the matter may involve a broader network of financial misconduct involving charitable transfers, patient assistance programs, and unauthorized third-party tuition payments. The hospital is cooperating with law enforcement to determine whether vulnerable patients and families were exploited over many years. Maya stared at her. They mean me. Ethan stood slowly. They mean all of us now. Reverend Avery's face darkened. They are coming after the church. Yes, Ethan said. Because the first lie is failing. Maya looked at the old stained glass window above the sanctuary doors. Morning light pressed through it in blue and gold pieces, falling across the worn carpet where generations had walked in sorrow and left with casseroles, prayers, and somebody's hand on their shoulder. I won't let them hurt this place, she said. Ethan picked up his briefcase. Then we move before they do. Where? To the source, he said. Street Catherine's built this accusation. Now we find out who signed every piece of it. To the source, Ethan said. Street Catherine's built this accusation. Now we find out who signed every piece of it. By noon, the rain had thinned to a cold mist over Baltimore. Ethan, Lena, Reverend Avery, and Maya left the church through the side entrance. Away from the cameras still waiting near the front steps, Sister Helen insisted Maya take a heavier coat from the donations closet, a dark wool one with a missing button at the sleeve. Maya tried to refuse, but Sister Helen looked at her over the rims of her glasses and said, Baby, this is a Baptist church. We don't let folks walk into battle cold. Maya put it on. They did not go straight to Street Catherine's. Ethan knew Langford would expect that. Instead, they drove to Ethan's office, where Lena had already pulled public records, hospital board filings, donor reports, and corporate registrations tied to Street Catherine's memorial. On the conference table, Lena spread the documents like puzzle pieces. Here is what I have so far, she said. Dr. Victor Langford is chief administrator. Elaine Porter oversees nursing compliance on the 3rd floor. Sarah Whitcomb is night shift nurse with access to medication inventory. That we knew. But Harbor Light Pain Management shows up in 3 places. Maya looked up sharply. That's the name I remembered. It gets better, Lena said. Harbor Light is technically an independent clinic outside the city, but one of its consulting vendors is Bell Strategic Health Solutions. Reverend Avery frowned. Bell, as in Councilman Richard Bell. His brother owns the company, or says he does. Richard Bell himself used to be listed as an advisor before he ran for city council. Lena slid another page forward. Street Catherine's has been sending community outreach grants to Bell Strategic for the last 2 years. Some of that money then goes to Harbor Light as patient access coordination. Ethan read the page silently, his face giving away nothing. And the missing medication? No direct proof yet. But controlled substance inventory shortages at Street Catherine's increased after Langford signed a partnership agreement with Harbor Light for pain management referrals. 3 months later, Maya files an internal complaint about medication discrepancies. 6 months after that, she gets arrested. Maya sat very still. I thought I was just seeing sloppy paperwork. Ethan looked at her. You were seeing the edge of something bigger. The words frightened her. A person could fight a misunderstanding, maybe even a corrupt supervisor, but something bigger meant money. Lawyers, donors, men who shook hands at ribbon cuttings and smiled for newspapers. Maya had spent her life in hospital rooms where pain was honest. This kind of pain wore suits. Ethan seemed to understand the look on her face. Miss Maya, we do not have to prove the whole system today. We just have to prove enough to stop them from burying you while we dig. Lena's phone buzzed. She checked it. Jenkins is on her way in with copies of the staffing schedule. Dr. Patel sent his signed statement. Carla Benton emailed hers. Holloway's signature samples are scanned. Also, I found something on Sarah Whitcomb. Ethan turned. What? Bankruptcy filing 3 years ago. Credit card debt. Medical bills. Car repossession. Then about 18 months ago, everything improves. New Lexus. Paid off cards. Designer purchases. But her salary did not change enough to explain it. Maya closed her eyes. I knew it. Knowing is not proving, Lena said gently. But it tells us where to look. Reverend Avery tapped the envelope he still carried. And the tuition records? They are trying to twist those. Ethan reached for the old manila envelope and opened it again, more carefully this time. The receipts were faded but legible. Some were from Dunbar Preparatory Academy. Others were lunch account records, book fees, test fees, and small scholarship disbursement forms from Street Mark Baptist Church. Maya's name did not appear on most of them. Reverend Avery had been the official intermediary, but tucked into the back was something Ethan had not fully read at the police station. A handwritten letter. The paper was yellowed, folded twice, and worn soft at the creases. On the outside, in Maya's careful handwriting, were the words, "For Ethan's file. If the school ever asks why." Ethan unfolded it. Maya saw the page and reached instinctively toward it, then stopped. I forgot that existed. Reverend Avery smiled sadly. I did not. Ethan read in silence. Then his face changed. Lena noticed. What does it say? Ethan did not answer immediately. He sat down, holding the letter like it weighed more than paper. Finally, he read aloud. To whom it may concern, the child attached to this account is not a charity case. His name is Ethan Carter. He is bright, respectful, and determined. His mother is ill, and poverty is pressing hard against his door. But poverty should not be allowed to decide the size of his future. Please, accept this payment through Street Mark Baptist Church and do not inform the child. Let him stand in his classroom without feeling beholden to anyone. Sometimes the greatest kindness we can give a child is the chance to believe he earned his place. Maya looked down at her hands. The room was silent. Ethan's voice was lower when he continued. If additional fees arise, contact Reverend Avery. I will do what I can. This boy is going somewhere. Please do not let the world close the door before he reaches it. He stopped reading. For all his command in the police station, for all his sharp words and tailored calm, Ethan Carter suddenly looked like the boy from the hallway again, the one who had eaten a sandwich slowly because hunger had taught him manners before childhood was done with him. Maya wiped at her cheek. I didn't mean for you to see that. I know, he said. That was the point. I know. I just wanted you to have a chance. Ethan folded the letter carefully, but his hands were not as steady as before. You keep saying that as if a chance is a small thing. Before Maya could answer, Lena cleared her throat softly. I hate to interrupt the holy moment, but this letter helps. If they claim tuition payments were laundering, this gives motive, timing, and source. It predates the alleged fraud by decades. It is also emotionally devastating, which does not hurt. Reverend Avery gave her a look. Lena shrugged. I respect grace, Reverend. I also like admissible exhibits. Ethan slid the letter into a protective sleeve. This stays with me. No, Maya said quickly. He looked at her. She took a breath. Make a copy. Keep the copy. The original. I want you to have it. The room seemed to still again. Maya, Ethan said, you said you kept going. I want you to keep the proof that somebody knew you would. He looked away toward the window. Outside, cars hissed over wet pavement. A man in a Ravens jacket hurried past with a newspaper over his head. Baltimore kept moving, indifferent and alive. Ethan put the letter gently into his inner coat pocket. Thank you. Lena's laptop pinged again. She leaned over it, and her expression shifted. We have another problem. Ethan turned toward her. Of course we do. Hospital Legal just filed a formal complaint with the nursing board. They're seeking emergency suspension of Maya's license pending investigation. They attached the media statement, the police referral, and alleged financial irregularities tied to church funds. Maya's shoulders sank. That license is all I have left. Ethan stood. No. It is one thing you have. They do not get to define all. Lena scrolled. There is more. Street Catherine's has scheduled an internal compliance hearing for tomorrow morning. Closed session. They are calling it a personnel matter. If Maya does not appear, they will mark her as non-cooperative. They want her in their building, Reverend Avery said. Ethan nodded. And they want control of the room. Maya looked up. Do I have to go? Yes, Ethan said. But not alone. Lena looked at him. They may refuse to let counsel in. Then we refuse to let them pretend it is fair. Ethan gathered the statements, the scanned receipts, the journal inventory, and the first page of the hospital complaint. His movements were quick now, purposeful. We need Jenkins, Patel, and the body cam preservation notice ready tonight. Lena, subpoena draft for Sarah's badge history and Elaine's communications. Also send a litigation hold letter to Street Catherine's, Harbor Light, and Bell Strategic Health Solutions. Already drafting, Lena said. Maya heard the names stack up like storm clouds. Harbor Light, Bell Strategic, Nursing Board, Compliance Hearing, Federal Court. It was too much. She had spent her life understanding medication charts, discharge instructions, blood pressure numbers, the small human signs of pain. Now the whole world seemed to be made of traps with official names. Ethan saw her face. Miss Maya, breathe. She tried. They are counting on you feeling overwhelmed. I am overwhelmed, I know. But overwhelmed is not defeated. Reverend Avery reached across the table and took her hand. Child, when Pharaoh doubled the bricks, that did not mean freedom was lost. It meant he was afraid. Maya almost smiled through her tears. You always did know how to make scripture sound like legal strategy. It has been winning cases longer than Ethan, the pastor said. That drew a brief, real laugh from Lena. For a moment, in that cluttered office with rain on the windows and danger pressing from every side, Maya felt the smallest warmth of family around her. Not safety, not yet, but people standing close enough that she could stop pretending her knees were not weak. Then Ethan's office phone rang. Lena answered. Carter Civil Rights. She listened, and her face sharpened. Hold on. She covered the receiver. It's someone from Street Catherine's. She says her name is Keisha Bell. She won't give details over the phone, but she says Maya was right about Sarah. She says she has a copy of the original camera footage. Maya's hand tightened around Reverend Avery's. Ethan stepped toward the phone. Lena added, She sounds scared. Ethan took the receiver. Miss Bell, this is Ethan Carter. Listen carefully. Do not go back inside the hospital. Do not call hospital security. Do not speak to Elaine Porter or Dr. Langford. Where are you? A faint voice crackled through the line. Ethan's expression hardened. He covered the receiver and looked at Lena. She's in a diner parking lot off North Avenue, he said, and she says someone followed her there. Ethan did not wait for anyone to ask what came next. He already had his coat in his hand before Lena finished writing the address. Maya stays here, he said. Maya stood at once. No, he turned. Miss Maya, no, she repeated. And for the first time all day, the word did not tremble. That young woman is scared because of something that happened around me. I am not sitting in this office while somebody else risks her life. Ethan's expression tightened. You are the person they are trying to destroy. If they followed Keisha, they may be watching for you too. Then let them see me standing. Reverend Avery rose slowly from his chair. I am going with her. Lena looked from one to the other, then at Ethan. We can argue for 5 minutes and lose Keisha, or we can take 2 cars and keep our heads. Ethan held Maya's gaze. He understood then that the woman who had nearly signed away her life in a police station was not the same woman standing in his office now. Fear had not left her, but it had been forced to make room for duty. He nodded once. Fine. You ride with Reverend Avery in the back. You do not get out unless I say it is safe. Maya reached for the old wool coat Sister Helen had given her. I have taken orders from worse men than you, Ethan Carter. Lena almost smiled. That may be the first good sign we've had all day. They reached the diner off North Avenue just as the afternoon light began to fade into the color of dishwater. It was an old place with a red neon sign that flickered between open and pen. The kind of diner where truck drivers, nurses, cabbies, and lonely old men came for coffee strong enough to keep regret awake. Rainwater shone in the potholes. A city bus sighed at the corner and pulled away, leaving diesel smoke hanging low over the street. Keisha Bell was waiting in a booth near the back window, both hands wrapped around a paper coffee cup she had not touched. She was younger than Maya expected, maybe 28, with dark braids pulled back tight and eyes that kept jumping to the parking lot. Her scrub jacket was zipped to her chin, though the diner was warm. A plate of fries sat in front of her, untouched and growing cold. When Ethan entered, Keisha stood so quickly her knee hit the underside of the table. "Miss Bell?" he asked. She nodded, then looked past him and saw Maya. The fear in her face turned to shame. "Miss Maya," she whispered. Maya walked to her before Ethan could stop her. "Baby, sit down before you fall down." That small sentence nearly broke Keisha. She sat, but tears filled her eyes. "I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. I should have told somebody when I saw Sarah with your badge." Maya slid into the booth across from her. "You're telling it now." Keisha shook her head. "You don't understand. They have everything. Schedules, cameras, supervisors, lawyers. Elaine said if I opened my mouth, she'd report me for medication mishandling. She said I'd never work as a nurse again. I got a son. He's 4. I can't lose my license." Lena sat at the end of the booth, angled so she could see the door and the window at the same time. "Who followed you?" Keisha glanced toward the parking lot. Black sedan, tinted windows. "It was behind me when I left Street Catherine's. I made 3 turns I didn't need to make, and it stayed there. It parked across the street when I pulled in." Ethan looked through the rain-streaked window. At the far edge of the lot, near a closed laundromat, a black sedan idled with its lights off. "Lena," he said quietly. "Already got the plate," she replied, phone low in her hand. Reverend Avery sat in the booth behind them, Bible open but eyes watchful. He looked less like a pastor in that moment and more like a grandfather ready to stand between danger and any child in the room. Ethan turned back to Keisha. "You said you have original camera footage." Keisha reached into the pocket of her scrub jacket and pulled out a small blue USB drive. She did not put it on the table immediately. She held it in her palm like it might burn through her skin. "This is from the hallway outside the medication room," she said. "Not the clip the hospital gave police, the original export. I copied it before Elaine locked me out of the system." "What does it show?" Ethan asked. Keisha swallowed. Sarah, using Maya's badge. Elaine standing with her. Sarah goes in, comes out with a gray pharmacy transport bag. Elaine checks the hallway, then they leave through the service elevator. Maya closed her eyes. Even when she had known, hearing it still hurt. Betrayal had weight. It pressed harder when it came from people who smiled beside you at the nurse's station and asked about your weekend. "There's more," Keisha said. Ethan's face did not change, but his pen paused over the legal pad. "Go on." Keisha pushed the USB toward him. "Emails. Elaine and Dr. Langford. Some with Sarah copied. They talk about inventory adjustments and assigning exposure to one employee. I didn't know what that meant at first. Then the night they arrested Miss Maya, I saw Elaine edit the reconciliation sheet after the police left." Lena leaned in. "Did you copy the emails too?" "Yes. Screenshots and exported files. I don't know if it's enough." "It is enough to start," Ethan said. "Maybe enough to blow the door open." Keisha lowered her voice. "There's a recording too." Maya looked at her. Keisha's hands tightened around the coffee cup. "Last week, Elaine called me into Langford's office. I thought it was about overtime, but when I got there, Sarah was crying, and Langford was angry. I turned on my phone recorder before I walked in because I was scared." "What did he say?" Ethan asked. Keisha's eyes moved to Maya, and shame returned. "He said you were the only person the police would believe is guilty." Maya's voice was barely above a whisper. "Why?" Keisha's lips trembled. "Because you were poor. Because you were black. Because you were alone. Because everybody knew you handled charity forms. And that made the money part easy to explain." Reverend Avery closed his Bible. The diner noise seemed to fall away. The clatter of plates, the hiss of the grill, the waitress calling an order for meatloaf and mashed potatoes. For a moment, all Maya heard was her own heartbeat. Ethan's voice grew very quiet. Exact words matter. Miss Bell. Keisha nodded and pulled out her phone. Then you should hear them. She pressed play. At first, there was only muffled movement. Then Elaine's voice. She's going to deny it. Then Dr. Langford. Smooth and cold. Of course she is. Maya William has spent a lifetime performing innocence. That is precisely why this works. Sarah's shaky voice followed. What if people believe her? Langford laughed softly. People will feel sorry for her. That is not the same as believing her. She is poor, black, widowed, and sentimental. The perfect tragedy. The perfect criminal. If we frame it correctly. Maya's face went gray. Ethan looked as if every muscle in his body had gone still to keep from shaking with rage. The recording continued. Elaine said. And the church transfers? Langford answered. Suspicious generosity. That is all we need to say. No one trusts unexplained money when drugs are missing. Keisha stopped the recording. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then Maya stood. Ethan reached for her arm, but she was not moving toward the door. She walked to the window and looked out at the black sedan across the lot. Rain ran down the glass between her and whoever sat inside. They thought my kindness made me weak, she said. Ethan came to stand beside her. They were wrong. The sedan's engine started. Lena raised her phone and recorded as it pulled away from the curb, tires hissing over the wet pavement. I sent the plate to a friend, Lena said. We'll know who owns it soon. Keisha wiped her face. What happens now? Ethan placed the USB in a small evidence pouch from his briefcase, sealed it, and wrote the time and location across the label. Then, he looked at each of them in turn. Now we make copies. We get this into proper hands before Langford knows we have it. We notify the Attorney General's office, request emergency preservation orders, and prepare for tomorrow's hospital hearing. Maya turned from the window. And Keisha? Keisha looked down. I can't go home if they followed me. Reverend Avery stood. There is a guest room at the parsonage, and plenty of soup left from yesterday. Keisha blinked. You don't even know me. The old pastor gave her a tired, gentle smile. Child, that has never stopped the church from feeding anybody. For the first time, Keisha almost smiled. Ethan's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his face hardened. Lena saw the change. What now? Street Catherine's moved the compliance hearing up, Ethan said. Tomorrow at 8 a.m. And they notified the nursing board that Maya refused to cooperate with internal investigators. Maya stared at him. I never refused. I was in police custody. I know. Ethan looked toward the diner window, where the black sedan had vanished into the wet Baltimore evening. They're rushing, he said. Which means they're scared. They're rushing, Ethan said. Which means they're scared. By dawn, fear had become a schedule. At 5:30 a.m., the parsonage kitchen was already lit. Sister Helen stood at the stove in a flowered housecoat, stirring oatmeal as if feeding frightened witnesses before sunrise were a normal church duty. Reverend Avery made coffee strong enough to hold up a spoon. Keisha sat at the table with both hands wrapped around a mug, wearing one of Sister Helen's cardigans over her scrubs. Maya sat beside her, quiet but awake, the borrowed wool coat folded over the back of her chair. Ethan and Lena had not slept at all. They arrived with copies, folders, a sealed evidence pouch containing Keisha's USB, and a printed timeline taped together from 3 legal pads. Lena's eyes were red, but her voice was sharp. Ethan looked as if exhaustion had burned everything unnecessary out of him. We go in calm, he said. No shouting unless they force the door closed. No accusations we cannot support. No giving them an excuse to remove Maya from the room. Maya looked down at the oatmeal Sister Helen had placed before her. They already removed me from my own life. Ethan paused. Then today we begin taking it back. The compliance hearing was held in a conference room on the 6th floor of Street Catherine's Memorial, the kind of room donors saw during tours. Glass walls, polished table, framed photographs of smiling doctors, a coffee station with real cups instead of foam ones. Through the windows, Baltimore lay under a pale winter sky. Row houses and church steeples washed in gray light. Maya had walked those hospital halls for decades in rubber-soled shoes, carrying bedpans, blankets, charts, and grief. Now she entered through the front doors like an accused stranger. People turned to look. Some nurses looked away. A janitor who had known her for 15 years touched his cap and whispered, "Morning, Miss Maya." That nearly broke her more than the stairs. Ethan walked at her right side, Lena at her left. Reverend Avery and Keisha followed behind. 2 reporters waited outside the hospital, but Ethan had refused to speak on the way in. He wanted this room first. Dr. Victor Langford was already seated at the head of the table when they arrived. He wore a dark suit and a blue tie, his hands folded neatly over a leather folder. Elaine Porter sat to his right, her face pale, but powdered into composure. Sarah Whitcomb sat farther down, eyes rimmed red, fingers twisting a tissue in her lap. A hospital attorney named Margaret Sloan sat beside Langford with a laptop open and a stack of documents arranged in perfect order. Langford looked up with practiced disappointment. "Miss William, I am saddened that matters have reached this point." Maya felt Ethan shift beside her, but she answered for herself. "So am I, Doctor." Margaret Sloan cleared her throat. "This is an internal compliance review regarding serious allegations of controlled substance diversion, financial misconduct, and failure to cooperate with hospital procedures. Mr. Carter, this is not a courtroom." "No," Ethan said, placing his briefcase on the table. "That is obvious from the lack of fairness." Sloan's mouth tightened. "Counsel may observe, but this committee controls its own process. If this committee intends to question my client about matters currently under criminal investigation, I will advise her accordingly. If this committee uses fabricated evidence to damage her license, we will seek emergency injunctive relief. And if anyone in this room destroys or alters records after receiving my litigation hold, we will add spoliation to the complaint." Langford gave a patient smile. "Aggressive words do not change facts. Then facts should not frighten you," Ethan said. The room chilled. Sloan began with the hospital's version. She presented badge logs showing Maya's ID accessing the restricted medication room. She presented patient assistance forms allegedly signed by Maya. She presented internal notes from Elaine, stating Maya had unusual involvement with vulnerable patients and blurred professional boundaries. Then she presented the anonymous church payments as evidence of suspicious outside financial activity. Maya sat still through most of it, fingers curled in her lap. Each polite phrase felt like someone placing clean linen over a corpse. When Sloan finished, she looked at Maya. "Miss William, do you have any explanation for this pattern?" Before Ethan could speak, Maya lifted her head. "Yes," she said. "The explanation is that you took every act of care I ever gave and bent it until it looked crooked." Elaine's eyes flicked down. Langford leaned back. "Maya, this is not personal. It became personal when your people put cuffs on me." Sloan said, "Please answer directly. Did you or did you not authorize recurring payments through Streetmark Baptist Church to benefit a minor connected to hospital services?" "I did," Maya said. Langford's eyebrows lifted, as if he had been handed a gift. Maya continued, "I used my own paycheck. I used overtime money. I used the money my husband left in a tin box after he died. I helped a child stay in school because his mother was dying in this hospital while he did homework in your hallway." Sloan typed something. "And you concealed your identity." "I protected his dignity." Ethan slid a folder forward. "For the record, those payments began more than 20 years before the alleged medication diversion and are fully documented by church ledgers, tuition receipts, and Miss Williams' personal wage withdrawals. Any attempt to characterize them as proceeds from recent drug activity is either reckless or knowingly false." Langford's smile thinned. "You are turning a compliance review into theater." "No, Doctor," Reverend Avery said from the back of the room. "Theater is standing in front of cameras grieving over a woman you helped destroy." Sloan snapped. "Reverend, you are not a participant in this proceeding," Ethan said. "He is a witness." Lena opened her laptop and turned it toward the screen at the end of the conference room. "Let's discuss timestamps." Sloan frowned. "We did not authorize a presentation." "You authorized accusations," Lena said. "This is the invoice." Ethan connected the laptop before anyone could stop him. On the screen appeared the hospital's own badge log. 8:43 p. Maya, William. Restricted medication room. Then Ethan displayed the code blue report from room 214. 8:41 p.m. Staff present, including Maya, William, Nurse Linda Jenkins, Dr. Sanjay Patel. Ethan placed signed statements on the table one by one. Nurse Jenkins confirms Maya was in room 214. Dr. Patel confirms it. The patient's daughter confirms it. So unless Miss William can split herself in half, the badge access is not evidence of her presence. Sarah's tissue tore in her hands. Elaine's jaw tightened. Langford said, "Badge sharing is a violation of hospital policy. If Maya gave her badge to someone, she did," Ethan said, to Nurse Sarah Whitcomb, who told her Elaine Porter approved an inventory check. Sarah looked up sharply. Sloan said, "That is an unsubstantiated accusation." Keisha spoke from the back, her voice shaking but clear. "No, it isn't." All eyes turned toward her. Sloan's expression hardened. "And you are?" "Keisha Bell. Night shift. 3rd floor." Langford went very still. Keisha stepped forward. "I saw Sarah with Maya's badge. I saw Elaine outside the medication room. And I copied the original camera footage before the hospital replaced it with the edited clip." The room went dead quiet. Ethan removed the sealed evidence pouch from his briefcase and placed it on the table. "This USB contains original footage, internal emails, and a recording of Dr. Langford discussing how to frame Maya William as the likely suspect." Langford stood. "This is outrageous." Ethan looked at him. "Sit down." The command was so calm that for a moment, Langford obeyed before realizing he had. Sloan reached for the USB. Ethan pulled it back. "No. This goes to law enforcement and the Attorney General, not back into the hands of the people it implicates." Elaine turned toward Sarah. "You stupid girl." Sarah burst into tears. "You told me it was just temporary. You said nobody would get hurt." Maya flinched. Langford snapped. "Sarah, stop talking." Ethan's eyes moved to Sarah. "Miss Whitcomb, if you have legal counsel, call them. If you do not, ask for one before you say another word. But understand this, they are preparing to let you carry what they built." Sarah looked at Langford, then at Elaine. Whatever loyalty she had left seemed to drain out of her face. Sloan closed her laptop. "This hearing is suspended." "No," Ethan said. "This hearing is over." Langford's face darkened. "You have no authority to declare that." The conference room door opened. Detective Harris stepped in with Officer Daniels and a woman in a navy suit Maya did not recognize. The woman carried a badge case in one hand and a folder in the other. "Dr. Langford," she said, "I'm Special Investigator Marlene Price with the Maryland Attorney General's office. This hospital is now under preservation order. No records, devices, footage, internal communications, or personnel files related to Maya William. Controlled substance inventory. Street, Mark Baptist Church, Harbor Light Pain Management, or Bell Strategic Health Solutions are to be altered, removed, or destroyed." Langford's face lost color. Ethan turned slightly toward Maya. "This is why we moved before they did." Investigator Price looked at Elaine. "Miss Porter, we also need to speak with you regarding an incident involving removal of evidence from an employee locker." Elaine gripped the arms of her chair. Detective Harris avoided Maya's eyes, but his voice was formal now. "Miss William, you are free to leave this room. We may need your cooperation as a witness." As a witness, the word moved through Maya slowly, almost too gently to trust. Maya stood. Her knees still trembled, but she stood. She looked at the polished conference table, at the framed photographs, at Langford's expensive suit, and Elaine's frozen face. For years, this hospital had taught her to bow her head, accept the hard shifts, sign the forms, stay grateful, stay quiet. She did not bow now. "I gave this hospital the best years of my life," she said. "You will not use them to bury me." Then she turned and walked out with Ethan beside her, while behind them, for the first time, the people who had built the lie were the ones who could not leave the room. "That's them," Maya whispered. "Those are the men I saw at Street Catherine's." Ethan did not move. He stood under the streetlight, with rain misting the shoulders of his coat. watching the men carry boxes from Bell Strategic Health Solutions into the white truck. Years of courtroom discipline held him still. Rage wanted motion. Evidence required patience. "Lena," he said quietly, "keep recording. Get the truck plate, the faces, the side door, everything. Already on it," she replied, phone steady in both hands. One of the men glanced toward them. He was tall, with a shaved head and a black lanyard hanging from his neck. Maya felt her stomach tighten. She knew that walk, that broad-shouldered shape, the way he moved through hospital corridors, as if locked doors were suggestions. Elaine had called him facilities. Maya had believed her because believing people had always seemed easier than suspecting them. The man said something to the driver. The driver looked toward the sidewalk. Reverend Avery stepped closer to Maya. "Stay behind me, child." Ethan shook his head without looking back. "Nobody approaches them. We are witnesses, not heroes in a parking lot." "They've seen us," Lena said. "Good," Ethan replied. "Let them know they're being recorded." The side door opened again. This time, a woman in a gray coat appeared, carrying a laptop bag and 2 file boxes stacked awkwardly in her arms. Even from across the street, Maya recognized the face from local news. Councilman Richard Bell. He was not carrying the boxes himself, but he stood just behind the woman, one hand on his phone, the other pointing sharply toward the truck. Ethan's voice dropped. "There he is." Maya stared. Councilman Bell had come to Street Catherine's Thanksgiving drive once. He had shaken her hand near the children's coat table and told the cameras that nurses like her were the moral backbone of Baltimore. She remembered being tired that day, remembered thinking he held her hand just long enough for the photograph. Now he was watching boxes leave a building after midnight. Lena zoomed in. "Got him." The black lanyard man started across the street. Ethan turned slightly. "Reverend, take Maya to the car." "No," Maya said. "Miss Maya." "No. I spent too many years stepping back when people with money walked forward." The man stopped a few feet from Ethan. "You folks lost?" Ethan gave him a mild look. "Public sidewalk. This is private business." Then, conduct it privately during business hours without loading records into a truck after receiving notice of a state investigation. The man's eyes narrowed. "You got a badge?" "No. I have a bar license and a camera." Lena lifted her phone a little higher. The man looked toward Maya, and recognition flickered in his face. "You're that nurse." Maya's fingers curled around the edge of her coat. "Yes, I am." Before he could answer, sirens sounded in the distance. The man turned back toward the alley. Councilman Bell heard them too. For one brief second, the polished politician disappeared, and a frightened man looked out through his face. 2 unmarked cars turned onto the street, followed by a marked state police vehicle. Investigator Marlene Price stepped out before the first car fully stopped, her badge already in her hand. "Step away from the truck," she called. The men in black lanyards froze. The driver raised both hands. Councilman Bell lowered his phone slowly. Price crossed the street with 2 agents behind her. "Bell Strategic Health Solutions is under emergency preservation order. No documents, devices, storage media, or physical records leave these premises." Bell recovered enough to put on his public voice. "Investigator, this is a misunderstanding. Those boxes are being moved to secure storage." "At midnight?" Price asked. "Our office is under renovation," Lena murmured. "That man lies like he campaigns." Ethan did not smile. Price looked at the truck. "Open it." Bell's attorney, or someone trying to become one in a hurry, began protesting from the sidewalk. Price ignored him. The back of the truck rolled open. Inside were stacked bankers' boxes, computer towers, external drives, and sealed bags, marked with labels from Street Catherine's Memorial, Harbor Light Pain Management, and Bell Strategic. Maya stopped breathing for a moment. There, on one box near the front, was a label written in blue marker. Street Catherine's Assistance Forms, 3rd floor. Her life had nearly been destroyed by papers like those. Price glanced at Ethan. "You were right to call. I prefer being early," Ethan said. Bell looked at him with open hatred. "You have no idea what you're stepping into." Ethan's voice stayed calm. "That is what corrupt men say when they run out of clean explanations. The agents began photographing the boxes. One of them removed the black lanyard man's badge and bagged it. Another took the driver's information. Price ordered the truck sealed. Councilman Bell's phone was taken after a brief argument that ended with the words, obstruction and warrant. Maya stood under the streetlight, rain on her face, watching power lose its smoothness. She expected to feel triumph. Instead, she felt tired enough to weep. Reverend Avery seemed to understand. Justice has weight, child, even when it's good news. By morning, the story had changed. Not completely. Lies did not die in one news cycle, but they limped. Channel 7 opened with footage of Bell Strategic's midnight document removal, then cut to Ethan's statement from outside the church, then to Maya's brief words about paying tuition from her own wages. By noon, Street Catherine's announced that Dr. Victor Langford had been placed on administrative leave. By evening, Elaine Porter had retained counsel. Sarah Whitcomb, through her attorney, entered preliminary cooperation talks. Harbor Light Pain Management closed its offices pending review. Councilman Bell called the investigation politically motivated, but he said it with the face of a man counting exits. Maya watched none of it live. Ethan would not let her sit in front of a television and bleed over every headline. Instead, he drove her back to her apartment for the first time since the arrest. The building looked smaller than she remembered. A row house divided into modest units, with peeling paint on the railings and a stubborn pot of winter pansies by the entrance. No reporters waited there now, only Mrs. Alvarez from downstairs, who opened her door the moment Maya stepped inside. "I knew they were lying," the old woman said, wrapping Maya in a hug that smelled of rose lotion and laundry soap. "I told my son, not Miss Maya, never Miss Maya." Maya closed her eyes and let herself be held. Her apartment was cold. The pot of collard greens still sat in the refrigerator. Samuel's photograph still stood on the side table, his city bus cap tilted slightly, his smile gentle and proud. Maya walked to it and touched the frame. "I tried, Sam," she whispered. Ethan stood respectfully by the door, but he heard. Maya turned toward him. "I never thought kindness would come back wearing a suit." He looked down for a moment, then reached into the inside pocket of his coat. From it, he withdrew the yellowed letter she had given him, the one she had written for his school file all those years ago. "I carried this all night," he said. "You didn't have to." "Yes," he said. "I did." Maya sat slowly on the sofa. Ethan knelt in front of her, not dramatically, not for cameras, but with the quiet reverence of a man returning to the beginning of his own life. He placed the letter in her hands. "I kept going, Miss Maya," he said. "I stayed in school. I became a lawyer. And today, my world needed you again." Maya's face crumpled. "I only wanted you to have a chance." Ethan's eyes shone. "You were my chance." For a while, neither of them spoke. The city moved beyond the windows. A bus sighed at the corner, brakes hissing in the cold. Maya looked toward the sound and smiled through tears. Samuel would have liked that. A bus arriving right on time in the middle of a miracle. The months that followed were not simple. Real justice never moved as quickly as a closing speech. Investigators combed through hospital servers, clinic invoices, charity fund records, pharmacy logs, and Bell Strategic contracts. Dr. Langford was indicted on charges tied to prescription drug diversion, fraud, obstruction, and conspiracy. Elaine Porter cooperated after evidence from Maya's journal and Keisha's USB made denial useless. Sarah Whitcomb testified that Maya had been chosen because she was trusted by patients but unprotected by power. Councilman Bell's name moved from press conferences to subpoenas. Detective Harris was placed under internal review. Later, in a public hearing, he admitted he had allowed assumptions about race, poverty, and status to narrow his investigation. Maya watched from the back row, her hands folded in her lap. When he found her afterward and said, "I am sorry," she did not offer easy forgiveness. She only said, "Then do better for the next woman." He nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Maya's nursing license was fully cleared. Street Catherine's offered reinstatement, with back pay, and a public apology written by lawyers. Maya read it once and set it aside. "They still don't know how to sound human," she told Ethan. "No, he said. "But they know how to write checks." She gave him a look, and he smiled. With part of the settlement, and with donations that poured in after the full story became known. Catherine's was forced to fund something Maya had quietly dreamed of for years. A safe room for children whose parents were receiving long treatments. Not a hallway. Not a plastic chair under a flickering light. A real room. 3 months after the night at the police station, Maya stood in front of a freshly painted door on the first floor of Street Catherine's memorial. The hallway smelled of new carpet, coffee, and sheet cake from the reception table. Patients, nurses, church members, reporters, and elderly neighbors crowded around. Reverend Avery offered a prayer. Sister Helen cried openly. Keisha stood near the back, holding her little boy's hand. Nurse Jenkins leaned on her cane and told anyone who would listen that she had always known Maya was innocent. On the door was a brass plaque. The Maya William Hope Room. Inside were small desks, shelves of books, warm coats in different sizes, a basket of granola bars, crayons, puzzles, and a soft blue couch. On one wall hung a framed sign that read, "For every child doing homework in a hospital hallway, and for every quiet soul who believes kindness still matters." Maya placed her hand on the plaque. Ethan stood beside her. "You all right?" he asked. She looked into the room. A little girl sat at a desk already, coloring while her grandmother received treatment upstairs. A boy with worn sneakers was reading a book near the window, his backpack tucked under his chair. Maya smiled. "For the first time in a long while," she said, "I think I am." Later, after the crowd thinned and the cake was cut, Ethan walked Maya to the front entrance. The sky outside was clear after morning rain. Sunlight touched the wet pavement and turned it silver. "You know," Maya said, "I still don't understand why God let it get that bad before help came." Ethan looked at the street, then back at her. Maybe help had to grow up first. Maya thought of an 11-year-old boy in a hospital hallway, hungry but polite, writing his future in careful pencil strokes. She thought of a young widow opening a tin box and deciding that grief could become mercy instead of bitterness. She thought of a confession left unsigned on a metal table. Then she lifted her head. "Long tot kong bien ma chivi kong ai nendai." Sometimes it grows in silence, learns the law, walks into a police station, and calls itself justice. The story reminds us that kindness is never wasted, even when it is unseen, unpraised, or forgotten by the world. Maya William gave from her poverty, served through her pain, and helped a child without ever asking for recognition. Years later, that quiet act of mercy became the very light that saved her when injustice tried to destroy her name. The lesson is simple but powerful. Truth may be delayed, and good people may be tested, but a life lived with compassion can plant seeds of justice that rise when they are needed most. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. If it touched your heart, I would truly love to hear your thoughts on the storytelling, the emotional pacing, or whatever stayed with you after listening. Every comment you share helps make the next stories more honest, moving, and meaningful. And if you have a powerful or meaningful story of your own, please do not hesitate to send it to the channel. It may become the next story to touch and inspire thousands of others. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only,